Between 1897 and 1899, roughly 100,000 people attempted the deadly journey to the Klondike goldfields, facing avalanches, starvation, freezing temperatures, and deadly rapids. The journey was brutal and merciless, with fewer than 30,000 even making it to Dawson City, and only about 200 actually striking it rich. Here's what life was really like for those who risked everything on the deadliest trail in America. If you fall asleep to these, hit subscribe. Also, comment where you're listening from. Got people from New York to Berlin last time. Kinda cool thinking we're all drifting off together. Alright, tonight it's the Klondike Gold Rush. But hold on, get yourself comfortable first. Like, actually cozy. Pillows good? Blanket situation handled? Perfect. Trust me on this one. The newspaper hits the floorboards with a slap that makes you jerk awake. Your landlord's voice booms through the thin door. Read rent's due tomorrow, don't make me come looking for you. You roll to your side on the lumpy mattress, springs digging into your ribs like accusing fingers. Seattle, 1897. Not exactly your golden era. The room smells like yesterday's fish and harbour fog, with a hint of desperation that seems to cling to everything these days. Your name is Thomas Reed, 32 years old, carpenter by trade, except there hasn't been much trade lately, not since the banks started collapsing in '93. 4 years of economic depression has a way of teaching you exactly how many meals you can skip before your hands shake too much to hold a saw. You drag yourself up and grab the newspaper, ready to scan the jobs section for the 5th time this week. But the headline stops you cold. Gold, ton of gold, arrives from Klondike. I mean, literally a ton. The steamship Portland just docked in Seattle yesterday with over a ton of gold. Today's equivalent of about $30 million, all from some creek nobody had ever heard of in Canada's Yukon Territory. You probably think I'm exaggerating. I'm not. This actually happened on July 15th, 1897. Real day, real gold, real ship. The article describes men stumbling down the gangplank, staggering under the weight of their fortunes. One guy had $5,000 in a coffee can, another carried $100,000 in a freaking sack. Several became millionaires literally overnight, from dust and nuggets they pulled out of a creek. Your fingers leave sweat marks on the newspaper as you read how it only took these guys a year in the Yukon to make more than you could earn in 10 lifetimes of carpentry. Sounds like horse shit to me, says Frank Porter, appearing at your doorway. He's a fellow tenant, burly iron worker who hasn't worked iron in months. It's real, you tell him, passing the paper. Look at the photographs. Frank whistles low. Jesus, that one fella's barely holding up his sack of gold. Says here they couldn't find enough men to carry it all off the ship. Makes you think, doesn't it? You say. Frank's eyes meet yours, and you both know what the other is thinking. In 1897, there's a popular song called Everybody's Working But Papa. That's America right now. Unemployment as high as 43% in some places. Men sleeping in alleys, bread lines stretching for blocks. And then suddenly, gold. Not like the California strike that was already played out. This was fresh, new, untapped. Frank hands the paper back. I heard they're calling it a stampede, thousands already booking passage north. The street outside is already different. You can feel it just looking out the window. Men rushing past with a new energy. The scent of possibility cutting through Seattle's usual damp resignation. My cousin says tickets to Alaska are already selling out, Frank adds. Ships that haven't been in water for years suddenly getting patched up and pressed into service. You thinking about it, you ask. Frank snorts. With what money? Takes a small fortune just to get outfitted proper. He's right about that. The newspaper says the Canadian Mounties won't let anyone cross without a literal ton of supplies, a year's worth of food, proper gear for Arctic conditions, tools, the works. But here's the thing about desperation. It makes math very creative. 3 hours later, you're standing in your sister Margaret's kitchen explaining your brilliant plan while she looks at you like you've suggested swimming to China. "You want to go where?" she asks, pausing with a dish rag in her hand. "The Yukon," you repeat. "The Klondike, where they found the gold." Her husband, Robert, looks up from his coffee. "With what money, Thomas?" This is where it gets awkward. "Well, I was thinking perhaps you might—" "No," Margaret cuts you off. "Absolutely not. We have 3 children to feed. And I'll pay you back 10 times over," you insist. "Look at the paper. These men are coming back with fortunes." "These men," Robert says carefully, "are experienced miners and outdoorsmen. You're a carpenter who gets winded climbing the stairs." "Ouch, but not wrong. I'm strong enough," you insist, "and I can build anything that's got to be useful up there." Margaret slams the dish down. "Do you have any idea what it's like up there? It's not just walking into the wilderness and picking up gold. People die, Thomas." "People are dying here too," you say quietly, slowly, of nothing. The kitchen falls silent except for the ticking clock. You've thought this through. You need about $600 for passage and supplies. Everything you own is worth maybe $40, but you're healthy, you're capable, and you're watching life slip away one missed meal at a time. "I read that it takes 2 weeks just to get there by boat," Margaret tries again. "And then what? Mountains? Ice? Wild animals?" "Better than tame predators," you attempt to joke. Nobody laughs. "For 1 year, you say finally. "Give me a loan for 1 year. If I haven't struck gold by then, I'll come back and work it off." Robert and Margaret exchange looks, that silent communication of married couples. "It's madness," Margaret whispers. "It's a chance," you counter. I'm skipping ahead a bit. Let me just tell you, they eventually gave in, not happily, but they did, and they weren't the only ones. All across America, families were having this exact same conversation. Brothers lending life savings to brothers, parents mortgaging farms, wives selling wedding silver. Gold fever isn't just a saying, it's a legitimate form of temporary insanity. The next week is a blur. Seattle has transformed into a gold rush supply depot overnight. The streets are jammed with men buying supplies, outfitters price gouging anything that might be needed in the north, and con men selling maps to secret gold spots. You're at Schwabacher's Hardware trying to decide between 2 different kinds of shovels when a grizzled man in a fur hat laughs at you. "Both those are worthless where you're going," he says. You look at him. "And where exactly am I going?" "Klondike, right? Written all over your face. First timer." You bristle slightly. "And you've been?" "3 times, he says, holding up fingers missing the top joints. "Frostbite," you realize with a chill. "Lost these on my 2nd trip. Name's Harris." "Thomas Reed," you reply. "So which shovel would you recommend?" He snorts. "None of these. Look, kid, I'm 32. Like I said, kid, the ground up there is frozen solid, permafrost. You don't dig it like normal dirt. You thaw it inch by inch with fire. This is news to you. Fire? You build a fire on top of the ground, let it thaw down maybe a foot, dig that out, build another fire. It can take days to go down just a few yards." Your heart sinks a little. Nobody mentioned this part. "But that's only in winter, right?" you ask. Harris laughs again, a sound like boots on gravel. Winter is 9 months of the year up there, and the ground never really thaws deep. Listen, put back the fancy shovel and let me tell you what you actually need. For the next hour, Harris walks you through the store, pointing out what's essential and what's worthless. He's been to the Yukon 3 times, never struck it rich, but survived, which seems like an achievement in itself. Most important thing, he says, good boots, the best you can afford. Men lose toes up there like they're shedding skin. You swallow hard. And the gold? Is it really as plentiful as they say? Something flickers in Harris's eyes, something between hunger and warning. I've seen nuggets, the size of walnuts, just sitting in creek beds, he says quietly. But I've also seen men work for months and find nothing but mud and misery. The Yukon doesn't give up her gold easy. You keep running into Harris over the next few days as you gather supplies. There seems to be an invisible community forming, men preparing for the journey, sharing tips, warnings, rumours. Some have been mining for years. Others, like you, couldn't tell gold from pyrite, but are willing to learn fast. You taking the White Pass Trail or Chilkoot? Harris asks over whiskey in a crowded saloon. You've been studying the maps. Everyone has to go to either Skagway or Dyer in Alaska by ship, then cross the coastal mountains to reach the headwaters of the Yukon River, which eventually leads to the gold fields. Chilkoot seems shorter, you reply. Harris nods. Steeper, though. Nearly straight up in places, but White Pass has turned into a mud pit with all the horses. They're calling it Dead Horse Trail now. Dead horse? Animals dying by the dozen, worked to death, breaking legs in the mud. The worst parts of the trail, you're literally walking on horse carcasses. You stare at your whiskey. Jesus. The Chilkoot's the smart choice for a man travelling light, Harris confirms. Just your own 2 feet to worry about. That night, back in your room, you spread out everything you've purchased on the floor. The Mounties won't let anyone cross the border without proof they're carrying a year's worth of supplies, no exceptions. Your pile includes 400 pounds of flour, 200 pounds of bacon, 100 pounds of beans, 25 pounds of dried vegetables, 25 pounds of coffee, 25 pounds of sugar, 25 pounds of dried fruit, a year's supply of matches, a gold pan, a shovel, an axe, a saw, a knife, cooking equipment, Arctic-rated clothing, boots, the best you could afford, tent, blankets, ropes. It all adds up to over 1,000 pounds of gear, and you'll be carrying every ounce of it yourself in multiple trips up a mountain trail that rises 3,500 feet in just 30 miles. You sit on your bed, suddenly overwhelmed. What the hell are you thinking? You've never even been camping before. There's a knock at the door. It's Frank. Got my ticket, he says, holding up a steamship passage to Alaska. Sold everything I own and borrowed the rest from my brother. You're going? You ask, surprised. We're going, he corrects you. SS Queen, leaving in 2 days. I got you a ticket too. Frank, I can't pay you back until we're rich, he finishes. I know, but 2 have better odds than 1, right? Besides, who else is going to make sure you don't fall off a mountain? 2 days. Just 2 days to say goodbyes, finish gathering supplies, and prepare for a journey that many won't survive. That night, you can't sleep. Your mind keeps circling through what lies ahead. The ship journey, the mountain pass, building a boat, riding rapids, finding a claim, mining in frozen ground, and somewhere at the end of it all, gold, freedom, a future, or death. Plenty of men will find only that. The night before departure, you have dinner at Margaret's house. The children are unusually quiet, watching you like you might disappear if they blink. I still think you're crazy, Margaret says, but she's made your favourite meal and packed extra socks in your gear. Probably am, you admit, but better a crazy chance than a certain slow decline. You write, she demands, every chance you get. I promise. Robert hands you a small leather pouch. It's a compass, belonged to our father. You swallow hard. I'll bring it back. Bring yourself back, Margaret says firmly. Morning comes too quickly. The docks are chaotic. Hundreds of gold seekers crowding gangplanks, mountains of supplies being loaded, families saying tearful goodbyes. The air smells of sea salt, coal smoke, and possibility. The SS Queen looks worryingly small for the journey ahead. A coastal steamer pressed into service for the Alaska route. Word is that any vessel that can float is now carrying stampeders north. They say we're packed in worse than cattle, Frank remarks as you jostle your way aboard with the bare essentials. Your main supplies are in the cargo hold. Cattle get slaughtered at the end of their journey, you reply. Let's hope the comparison ends there. The ship's whistle blows, deep and mournful. Final goodbyes are shouted across widening gaps of water. A man next to you is openly weeping as he waves to a woman on the dock. That your wife? You ask gently. My mother, he says, wiping his eyes. He can't be more than 20. She thinks I'm going to die up there. You don't know what to say to that. None of you know which ones will make it back. The Seattle shoreline slowly recedes, the familiar becoming distant. You're on your way to the Klondike, to the gold, to whatever fate awaits in the frozen north. Harris appears beside you at the railing. Last chance to turn back, he says with a crooked smile. Ship's already sailing, you point out. True enough. He spits into the water. Well, Reed, hope you're ready, because the real test isn't finding the gold. What is it then? His eyes meet yours, serious now. Surviving long enough to spend it. The ship turns northward, carrying its cargo of dreams and desperation toward the Alaskan coast. 2 weeks of open ocean before you reach Dyer. Then the real journey begins. You have no idea what you've gotten yourself into, but there's no turning back now. The ship lurches violently, sending you crashing into the bulkhead. Your stomach heaves as the SS Queen rides another massive wave. 2 days at sea, and you've discovered something crucial about yourself. You were absolutely not meant to be a sailor. You look like death warmed over, Frank says, somehow still standing as the ship pitches again. You'd respond, but opening your mouth seems dangerous at the moment. The cramped cabin reeks of unwashed bodies, wet wool, and the unmistakable tang of vomit. There are 12 men sharing a space designed for 6, and at least half of you are seasick. I've got some advice, Frank continues, unhelpfully cheerful. My cousin was in the Navy, says you should eat something, keeps the stomach settled. You glare at him. If I eat something, it won't stay settled for long. The young kid who was crying for his mother when you departed is curled in a corner, moaning. He hasn't kept down food in 48 hours. You're worried about him, but also too miserable yourself to offer much help. Harris swings down from an upper berth, landing with the ease of someone who's done this journey before. Don't die on the boat, he says, nudging the kid with his boot. Pretty embarrassing way to go for a gold seeker. Is it always this rough? You manage to ask between waves of nausea. Harris shrugs. Sometimes worse. North Pacific ain't known for its hospitality. Outside your cabin, you can hear shouts as sailors rush to secure something that's broken loose on deck. The entire vessel groans and creaks with each swell like it's contemplating whether to stay together or not. A man in the bunk above you leans down, face green. My brother did this last month. Said it took them 17 days to reach Dyer because of storms. 17 days? The thought makes your stomach turn again. If we sink, Frank jokes, at least we won't have to climb that mountain. Nobody laughs. Harris pulls out a flask and takes a swig. You know what's the real joke? This ain't even the hard part yet. 3 more days pass, each bringing new miseries. The storm finally breaks, but that just means you can now stagger around the deck instead of being confined below. The food is barely edible, salt pork and hardtack that seems designed to test the strength of your teeth. By the 6th day, a strange camaraderie has formed among the passengers. You learn names, share stories, swap tips gleaned from books and hearsay. Every man aboard has sold everything or borrowed heavily to make this journey. Every man believes he'll be the one to strike it rich. The kid, who couldn't stop vomiting, has recovered enough to introduce himself. William Daniels, 19 years old, former bank clerk from Portland. Everyone calls me Billy, he says, still pale but standing now. I've never even been camping before. You smile despite yourself. That makes 2 of us. 3, Frank admits, surprising you. Closest I got was sleeping in my uncle's barn after a wedding. Been too drunk to make it home. At night, huddled in your bunks, men talk about what they'll do with their gold. Buy a ranch in California, start a business, pay off debts, support aging parents. Your own dreams are more modest. A carpentry shop of your own, maybe a small house. Enough security that an economic downturn won't leave you starving. Harris rarely joins these conversations. When Billy asks him what he'll do with his next fortune, he just stares into his tin cup of coffee. First fortune got drunk away, he says finally. Second fortune went to doctors for my wife's consumption. She died anyway. Third one, he shrugs. Maybe I'll figure out something better to do with it this time. The ship grows quieter after that. On the 10th day, the captain announces we're approaching the Alaskan coast. Everyone rushes to the railing, straining for the first glimpse of land. What emerges from the morning fog steals the breath from your lungs. Mountains. Not like any mountains you've ever seen. These rise straight up from the sea, massive walls of rock and ice that pierce the clouds, snow-covered peaks that look like they're holding up the sky itself. Sweet Jesus, Frank whispers. That, Harris says, pointing at what seems like an impossibly narrow passage between towering cliffs, is where we're going. Billy's face has gone pale again. We have to climb those? Just the small ones, Harris replies with a grim smile. The Lynn Canal, they call it, a deep fjord cutting through the coastal mountains. The ship navigates carefully through waters crowded with chunks of ice that have carved off the glaciers. The closer you get to shore, the more intimidating the landscape becomes. And then rounding a bend, you see it. Dire. That's it? Frank sounds disappointed. That is a muddy beach with a long pier stretching out into the water. Behind it, a scattered collection of tents and hastily constructed wooden buildings. And beyond that, the mountains, looming like judgmental gods. The real shock comes when the Queen anchors offshore, and you realise you're not pulling up to the pier at all. Shallow water, Harris explains. Big ships can't make it in. We get to ride the lighter boats. These lighter boats turn out to be flat-bottomed barges that look far from seaworthy. You and about 20 other men climb down into the first one, along with whatever personal items you could carry. What about our supplies? Billy asks, panicked. All my food and equipment. They'll unload the cargo after the passengers. The barge operator, a leathery man with a permanent squint, laughs. For a price, of course. Nothing's free in Dire. He's not kidding. When you reach shore, the chaos is immediate. Hundreds of men are crowded on the beach, arguing with boat operators and local natives about transport prices. Mountains of supplies are piled haphazardly on the muddy ground. Dogs bark, men shout, and everything smells of salt water, mud, and unwashed humanity. "Welcome to Alaska," Harris says dryly. It takes 3 hours of arguing, negotiating, and finally paying exorbitant rates to get your supplies onto the beach. By then, the sun is setting, casting long shadows across the narrow valley that leads toward the infamous Chilkoot Pass. You stake out a small patch of relatively dry ground and set up the tent you'd purchased in Seattle, an activity that turns out to be far more complicated than the store clerk had suggested. "You've got it inside out," Frank points out after watching you struggle for 10 minutes. "I know that," you lie, flipping the canvas in frustration. Harris, who set up his own shelter with practiced efficiency, walks over with a steaming tin cup. "Coffee?" he offers. "Got a fire going." You accept gratefully. The evening air has a bite to it, colder than any Seattle night even though it's still summer. The coffee burns your tongue but sends warmth spreading through your chest. "What happens now?" you ask Harris. He gestures toward the valley. "Tomorrow we start hauling our gear toward the pass. First stop's a place called Finnegan's Point, about 6 miles in. Then it's Canyon City, then Sheep Camp. That's the last stop before the summit." "And we carry everything ourselves." Billy has joined you by the fire, clutching his own cup of coffee like it might try to escape. Harris nods. "Unless you've got money for packers, natives will carry for about 20 cents a pound. Some white men doing it too now. You do the math quickly. 1,000 pounds of supplies at 20 cents a pound. That's $200, money you definitely don't have." "What's it like?" Frank asks. "The trail." Harris stares into the fire. "First part's not so bad. Gets worse as you go. The summit." He shakes his head. "The summit's something else. We've heard it's steep," you prompt. "Steep?" Harris laughs, but there's no humor in it. "It's damn near vertical in places. They've cut steps into the snow and ice. Imagine climbing a ladder made of ice, carrying 100 pounds on your back with a line of men behind you who'll trample you if you slip." Sleep comes fitfully that night. The ground is hard, the tent leaks slightly, and every few hours ships' whistles announce new arrivals. More men, more dreamers, more fools, perhaps. Morning reveals a transformed Dyer. Overnight, at least 3 more ships have arrived, disgorging hundreds of stampeders and tons of supplies. The beach is now a maze of tents, crates, sacks, and men frantically organizing their outfits. "We should get moving," Harris advises over a breakfast of bacon and hardtack. "Trail gets more crowded every day." Getting moving turns out to be a relative term. First, you have to decide what to carry on your first trip. The strategy, Harris explains, is to move your supplies in stages. Carry what you can to the first camp, return for more, repeat until everything is at that camp, then start moving it all to the next one. Some men make 30 or 40 trips over the pass before they've moved their full outfit, he says. 40 trips over a mountain. The magnitude of the task ahead begins to sink in. You decide to carry about 80 pounds for your first load, mostly food staples secured in waterproof sacks. Frank manages to hoist about the same. Billy, smaller and less accustomed to physical labour, struggles with 60 pounds. "Don't overdo it," Harris warns as the young man staggers under his pack. "Better to make more trips than to injure yourself on the first day." The trail begins innocuously enough, a muddy path winding alongside the Taya River, which rushes with snowmelt from the mountains. The terrain is flat at first, the walking merely unpleasant rather than torturous. That changes rapidly. 2 miles in, the valley narrows. The trail climbs away from the river, ascending through dense forest. Roots and rocks make every step treacherous. The weight on your back seems to double with each hour. Your shoulders burn, your legs tremble. This is the easy part, Harris reminds you cheerfully when you stop to catch your breath. Men pass you going both directions, some heading toward the pass with heavy packs, others returning for their next load. Most nod in silent solidarity. A few offer encouragement. The really experienced ones don't waste breath on either. You encounter your first casualty about 4 miles in, a man sitting by the trail, boot off, foot swollen to twice its normal size. "Oh, stepped in a hole," he explains grimly. "Heard it snap." "Can you walk?" Frank asks. The man laughs bitterly. "Sure, all the way back to Seattle. There's nothing you can do for him. No doctors out here, no horses, no carts. If you can't walk, you can't continue." "Someone will help him back to Dyer," Harris says as you move on, but his tone suggests he's not entirely convinced. By late afternoon, your pack feels like it's filled with anvils instead of flour and beans. Your shoulders are raw. Each step requires conscious effort. Sweat soaks your clothes despite the cool air. There, Harris points ahead. Finnegan's Point. It's little more than a clearing where the valley widens slightly. Dozens of tents are already pitched. Men cook over small fires or sort through supplies. Others collapse in exhaustion. Some are already heading back down the trail for their next load. You drop your pack with a groan of relief. 6 miles, just 6 miles, and you feel half dead. "How far to the pass from here?" you ask Harris. "About 24 more miles," he says. "Gets steeper with every one." Frank falls to the ground beside his pack. "And we have to do this, 30 more times?" "Give or take," Harris confirms. Billy arrives last, his face flushed, breathing hard. He drops his pack and immediately vomits into the bushes. "You'll get your trail legs soon enough," Harris tells him, not unkindly. Everyone does, or they go back. You set up your tent, force down some food, and try not to think about tomorrow's return trip to Dyer. Instead, you study the other stampeders. There's a strange efficiency developing among them. Men are forming informal partnerships, watching each other's supplies, sharing information about trail conditions. You see a group that's devised a clever pulley system to help get packs on their backs without assistance. "Smart," Harris observes, following your gaze. "Up here, you adapt or you fail." Despite your exhaustion, you struggle to sleep that night. Your body aches in places you didn't know could ache. The sounds of the camp, men snoring, coughing, occasionally crying out in their sleep, keep you drifting in and out of consciousness. Morning comes too soon. After a quick breakfast, you head back down the trail toward Dyer, your pack now empty. The return journey is faster but still taxing. Your muscles protest every step. In Dyer, the scene is even more chaotic than before. New ships have arrived. The beach is an obstacle course of supplies, animals, and men. You locate your cached supplies, select your next load, and prepare for the return trip to Finnegan's Point. As you're adjusting your pack, a commotion breaks out nearby. A team of horses has bolted while being unloaded from a barge. They charge through the crowded beach, dragging a half-secured cart behind them. Men dive out of the way. Supplies go flying. The horses, panicked, head straight toward a stack of crates, your crates. Frank shouts a warning, but it's too late. The horses plow into the pile, sending your carefully packed supplies tumbling. One crate splits open, spilling precious flour into the mud. "No," Billy rushes forward, trying to salvage what he can. The horse's owner, a red-faced man in a filthy coat, finally manages to get control of his team. He offers no apology, just a shrug before leading the animals away. "Son of a bitch," Frank seethes. "Welcome to the gold rush," Harris says, helping Billy scoop mud-soaked flour back into a sack. "Rule 1, always secure your cash." You've lost maybe 20 pounds of flour. Not devastating, but every pound counts when you're required to have a year's supply. "We can replace it in sheep camp," Harris suggests. "Price is a highway robbery, but there are outfitters all along the trail now." You spend the rest of the day making the return trip to Finnegan's Point with your second load, then back to Dyer for a third. By the time you make camp that evening, every muscle in your body is screaming. Your boots have rubbed blisters on both heels. Your hands are raw from adjusting pack straps, and you've covered just 6 of the 30 miles to the pass. "It gets easier," Harris says, passing around a flask of whiskey as you all sit by the fire. "Body adjusts." "Does it?" Frank doesn't sound convinced. "No," Harris admits after a moment, "but you get better at ignoring the pain. Over the next week, you settle into a grueling routine. Up at dawn, load up, hike to the next cache point, return for more. Repeat until collapse. Each day, you push a little further along the trail. From Finnegan's Point to Canyon City, another 6 miles of increasingly difficult terrain. The trail narrows, crosses the river on precarious log bridges, climbs steeply in places. Your outfit, the term everyone uses for their supplies, moves slowly up the trail in stages. Canyon City is little more than a collection of tents and a few hastily constructed buildings perched on a rocky shelf above the river, but it now has saloons, restaurants and outfitters charging 5 times Seattle prices for replacement supplies. Price of doing business? Harris shrugs when you express outrage at being asked $2 for a pound of coffee that costs 30 cents in Seattle. You notice changes in yourself as the days pass. Your hands, once smooth from carpentry work, are now calloused and cracked. Your shoulders no longer scream with each load. They merely grumble. You've lost weight, but your legs feel stronger. You're learning to pack efficiently, to balance loads, to pace yourself on the steeper sections. Frank has developed a hacking cough that worries you, though he insists it's nothing. Billy's transformation is the most dramatic. The bank clerk's soft hands are bleeding constantly, but he never complains. His face has thinned, making his eyes seem larger. He's quieter now, the initial panic replaced by grim determination. "How much further to the summit?" Billy asks as you all eat dinner outside your tents in Canyon City. "From here, it's about 5 miles to sheep camp," Harris answers. "That's the last stop before the scales." "The scales?" you ask. "The steepest part. They call it the scales because that's where they weigh your load before the final climb." Harris takes a bite of beans. "From sheep camp to the scales is about 4 miles. Then it's just under a mile to the summit. Steepest damn mile you'll ever walk." 10 more miles. It doesn't sound that far, but you've learned that distances mean something different here. The trail from Canyon City to Sheep Camp proves Harris right. It's by far the most difficult stretch yet, following the river through a narrow canyon where the path sometimes clings to sheer rock walls. In places, crude wooden walkways have been constructed over particularly treacherous sections. You see your first dead body on this stretch, a man lying face down beside the trail, pack still on his back. Heart attack, someone says. No one has time to bury him. By unspoken agreement, you each remove your hats as you pass, but you keep moving, always moving. It takes 4 days to get all your supplies to Sheep Camp. The settlement is the largest you've seen since Dyer. Hundreds of tents spread across a widening of the valley, with actual wooden buildings housing businesses that seem more permanent. The reason becomes clear when Harris explains that many stampeders stage here for days or weeks, waiting for good weather before attempting the summit. "See that?" Harris points up the valley where the trees thin out and the bare rock and snow begin. At first, you're not sure what he's indicating, then you see it. A thin black line zigzagging up an almost vertical slope, a line that's moving. "That's the trail?" Frank asks incredulously. "That's the trail," Harris confirms, "and each of those little moving dots is a man carrying a pack." You squint, trying to make sense of the scale. The dots look impossibly small against the vastness of the mountain. The trail itself seems to go straight up in places. "Good God," Billy whispers. "Many have called on him on that stretch," Harris says, not sure how often he answers. That night, in sheep camp, a storm rolls in. Rain hammers your tent. Wind threatens to tear the canvas from its stakes. The temperature drops sharply. By morning, the rain has turned to snow. "We wait," Harris declares, surveying the white-capped peaks above. "Only fools and the desperate try the summit in weather like this. You're not sure which category you fall into anymore. For 3 days, the storm rages. No one attempts the pass. Men crowd into the few saloons and restaurants, swapping stories, sharing concerns about supplies running low. Rumors spread. The pass is closed for the season. The Canadian Mounties are turning people back. Someone died in an avalanche yesterday." Harris dismisses most of these. "Trail gossip," he says, "but the avalanche risk is real enough when it snows like this." On the 4th morning, you wake to silence. The wind has stopped. Poking your head outside the tent, you see stars fading in a pre-dawn sky of perfect clarity. "Today," Harris announces, already packing his summit gear. "We go today." You gather only what you can carry in one trip, about 80 pounds of your most essential supplies. The plan is for each of you to make multiple trips over the summit, just as you've done on earlier sections. "Leave your tent," Harris advises. "We'll come back for the rest once we've established a cache on the other side." By the time you're ready, a steady stream of men is already moving up the trail toward the scales. Everyone recognizes the opportunity of clear weather. Everyone knows it might not last. The trail out of sheep camp starts gradually enough, winding through the last stunted trees before the timberline. But soon the vegetation disappears entirely, replaced by snow, ice, and rock. The path steepens dramatically. Your breath comes in painful gasps. The air seems thinner, though Harris says it's just the exertion. Sweat freezes on your face. Your pack feels like it's filled with lead, and you haven't even reached the real challenge yet. 3 hours of brutal climbing brings you to what must be the scales. Relatively flat area where the trail seems to pause before the final ascent. Men with makeshift scales are indeed weighing packs, though it's not clear who authorized them to do so. "Too heavy," one declares, examining Billy's load. "You'll never make it up with that." "I have to," Billy insists. The man shrugs. "Your funeral." You look up at what awaits. The infamous Chilkoot Pass. From here, it's clear why Harris called it damn near vertical. The trail is literally a staircase chopped into the snow and ice, rising at an angle that seems impossible for a laden man to climb. It stretches up and up, disappearing into a notch between peaks that marks the summit and the Canadian border, and the stairs are packed with men moving slowly upward in a continuous line like ants climbing a wall. "They call it the Golden Stairs," Harris says beside you, though there's nothing golden about them. You watch as a man near the top stumbles, loses his balance, and falls. His pack comes loose, tumbling down the slope, narrowly missing several climbers before smashing onto the rocks below. Somehow, the man himself manages to catch himself, clinging to the steps as those behind him carefully maneuver around. "That's about a year's wages he just lost," Harris remarks. "And almost his life," you add. Harris just nods. "Ready?" "No, you're not ready." Looking at that final climb, you're not sure you'll ever be ready, but Frank is already adjusting his pack. Billy, pale but determined, is doing the same. So you hoist your load, tighten the straps until they bite into your shoulders, and take your place in the line of men preparing to ascend the golden stairs. The final test is about to begin. The first step onto the golden stairs nearly breaks you. Your boot slips on ice polished smooth by thousands of feet before yours. For one heart-stopping moment, you're certain you're going down, taking a dozen men with you. Somehow your hand finds a grip on the crude rope strung alongside the steps. You steady yourself, breathing hard. One step, Harris grunts from behind. Then another. Don't think about the top. One step, then another. Your world narrows to the ice beneath your feet and the back of the man in front of you. The pack tries to pull you backward with each movement. 80 pounds doesn't sound like much until it's actively trying to kill you. The line moves with excruciating slowness. No one can pass, no one can rest. To step out of line means to yield your spot, which might mean hours more waiting. So you keep climbing, though your legs burn and your lungs feel like they're filling with broken glass. 20 minutes in, the man ahead of you stops suddenly. The whole line grinds to a halt. "What's happening?" you call forward. The word comes back down the line. "Fallen pack, blocked trail." You take the moment to catch your breath. Sweat pours down your back despite the freezing temperature. You don't dare look down, or up for that matter. Better not to know how far you've come or how far you have to go. "Doing all right, Reed?" Harris asks. You manage a grunt that might pass for yes. The line starts moving again. Step, breath. Step, breath. Men curse, men pray, men count steps aloud like it's the only thing keeping them sane. Maybe it is. An hour into the climb, your body is screaming for rest. Your shoulders are on fire where the pack straps dig in. Your thighs quiver with each step, yet all around you men keep climbing. So you climb too. Billy is somewhere ahead, Frank somewhere behind. You've lost sight of both in the single file trudge upward. It's just you, the mountain, and hundreds of strangers all fighting the same battle. The wind picks up, sending needles of ice against your exposed face. Your beard, which you haven't bothered to shave since Seattle, is crusted with frozen breath. The fingers gripping the guide rope have lost all feeling. Almost halfway, someone shouts encouragingly. You could kill that man with your bare hands if you had the energy to reach him. 2 hours in, a commotion erupts further up the stairs. Shouts, a scream. The line stops again. "Man down," comes the call. Heart gave out. They're passing him down the line, hand to hand, a limp form being carefully manoeuvred past the ascending climbers. When the body reaches you, you see his face, blue-tinged, eyes staring at nothing. He looks about 60, though it's hard to tell beneath the frost-crusted beard. "One less man at the diggings," someone mutters as the body continues its journey down. You want to be horrified at the callousness, but a small, terrible part of you understands. Up here, death is just another obstacle to navigate around. 3 hours. Your world has become pain. Your legs move mechanically, without conscious input from your brain. The only thought you can hold on to is Harris's advice. One step, then another. "Look up, Reed," Harris wheezes behind you. "Take a gander." Against your better judgment, you raise your eyes from the endless stairs. And there it is, the summit. Much closer now, a notch between peaks where men are silhouetted against the sky, moving over the top and disappearing from view. The sight gives you a surge of energy. "We're going to make it," you say, half to yourself. "Course we are," Harris replies. "Told you the stairs was the hard part. After this, easy street." You don't believe him for a second. 4 hours after beginning the ascent, your hand reaches up and finds nothing. No more stairs. You've reached the top of the Chilkoot Pass. With a final tremendous effort, you haul yourself and your pack over the edge. The summit is flatter than you expected, a small plateau between peaks. Men collapse here, gasping for breath before gathering themselves for the journey onward. You join them, falling to your knees, then rolling onto your back. The sky above is a perfect blue. You've never seen anything so beautiful. Made it, Frank wheezes, appearing beside you and dropping his pack. Jesus, Mary, and Joseph. Where's Billy? You ask, suddenly concerned. Frank points back toward the stairs. Coming, slower, going for him. 10 minutes later, Billy crests the summit. His face is grey with exhaustion, but his eyes are bright with triumph. He staggers a few steps, then collapses next to you. I thought, he gasps, I thought I was going to die on those stairs. Day's still young, Harris says cheerfully, appearing behind him. Plenty of time for dying yet. You laugh, the sound strange in your own ears. You've made it over the Chilkoot Pass. The worst is behind you. Or so you think, until Harris points to a line of men at the far edge of the summit plateau. Canadian Customs, he explains. Mounties checking everyone's outfit. They're doing that up here? Frank asks incredulously. Harris nods. Summit's the border. They want to make sure nobody gets through without their year's supplies, like I told you in Seattle. They're serious about it. The red-coated Mounties have set up a checkpoint where the trail continues down the Canadian side. Each stampeder must present his outfit for inspection. Those who don't have the required supplies are turned back, forced to return down those golden stairs to gather more. But we're only carrying part of our outfits, you protest. The rest is still at sheep camp. They know that, Harris reassures you. Just tell them you've got multiple loads coming. They'll issue you a numbered tag. You show that each time you cross with more supplies. The four of you join the inspection line. After half an hour of waiting, you reach a stern-faced Mountie with a clipboard. He looks you over with practiced efficiency. Name? He asks. Thomas Reed. How many in your party? 4. Total weight of your outfit? About 1,000 pounds each, sir. How many trips do you anticipate making over the pass? You look at Harris, who holds up his fingers. Probably a dozen or so, you answer. The Mountie nods and hands each of you a small metal tag with a number stamped into it. Present this each time you cross. Once your complete outfit has been verified, you'll receive a certificate allowing you to proceed to the Yukon Territory. Yes, sir, you reply, surprised by the bureaucratic efficiency in such a remote location. Welcome to Canada, the Mountie adds, almost as an afterthought. And good luck. Beyond the checkpoint, the trail descends sharply again, though nothing like the brutal stairs on the American side. The path winds down through snowfields toward a tree line in the distance. Crater Lake is about 3 miles down, Harris informs you. That's our next staging area. After that, it's on to Lake Lindeman, then Lake Bennett. How far to Bennett? Billy asks. From here, about 30 miles. 30 more miles of hauling supplies. The thought is almost enough to make you turn around. Don't look so glum, Harris says, noticing your expression. The worst is behind us now, and Bennett's where we build the boats. Boats? This is news to you. Harris nods. Only way to get to Dawson once you've got all your gear over the pass. Build a boat at Bennett, then float down the Yukon River, about 500 miles. 500 miles by boat, through unknown waters, in a vessel you have to build yourself. The magnitude of this journey keeps expanding before you. One step at a time, Frank reminds you, seeing your face. Let's just get to Crater Lake first. The descent is easier than the climb, but still treacherous with heavy packs. The snow gives way to rocky terrain, then sparse trees as you lose elevation. By late afternoon, you reach Crater Lake, a small, ice-rimmed body of water surrounded by a growing tent city. Like every stop before, you establish a cache for your supplies, set up a temporary camp, then prepare for return trips to bring the rest of your outfit over the pass. Harris suggests resting for the remainder of the day before heading back to sheep camp tomorrow. You don't argue. Every muscle in your body feels wrung out. You manage to help set up the tent and heat some beans before collapsing into an exhausted sleep. Morning brings fresh pain as your abused body protests even the simplest movements, but there's no choice but to continue. You leave most of your gear at Crater Lake and begin the trek back to sheep camp for your next load. Heading down the golden stairs proves almost as challenging as going up, just in different ways. The strain shifts from thighs to knees. The constant braking motion sends shooting pains through your shins. Men pass you going both ways, up with fresh loads, down for more. It takes 3 days to get back to sheep camp, gather your next loads, and return to the summit. The Mountie checks your tag, nods, and waves you through once more. You make the descent to Crater Lake for the second time, add the new supplies to your cache, then turn around again. This becomes your life. Up and down. Up and down. Load after load. The days blur together in a haze of exhaustion and pain. Your world narrows to the trail, the weight on your back, and the next step forward. On your 6th crossing of the summit, you hear rumours of disaster. An avalanche has struck the trail just below sheep camp, burying dozens of stampeders. Was anyone we know there? You ask Harris anxiously when you meet him at Crater Lake. He shakes his head. Don't think so, but they're saying 60, maybe 70 men died. The news is sobering. Nature, it seems, is an even more formidable gatekeeper than the Mounties, yet the line of men crossing the pass never diminishes. If anything, it grows longer as more ships arrive in Daya and Skagway. By your 9th crossing, you're moving the last of your supplies over the summit. The Mountie with the clipboard checks your tag one final time, then hands you each a certificate. You're cleared for the Yukon Territory, he announces. Good luck at the diggings. From Crater Lake, you begin moving your complete outfit toward Lake Bennett, where you'll build your boats. The terrain is less steep now, but still challenging. A series of smaller lakes connected by portages. Lake Lindeman comes first, a long, narrow body of water nestled between mountains. Some stampeders are already building boats here, unwilling to make the final portage to Bennett, but Harris advises against it. Lindeman empties into Bennett through rapids that'll tear a poor boat to pieces, he explains. Better to make the final haul and build at Bennett itself. So you continue, moving your supplies in multiple trips along the shores of Lindeman, then over a rocky ridge to the final destination, Lake Bennett. The journey from Summit to Bennett takes another 2 weeks of relentless labour. Bennett is like nothing you've seen before. The narrow end of a long lake stretching northward, its shores have been transformed into a vast construction yard. Thousands of men are busy felling trees, sawing planks, and building boats of every conceivable design. The air rings with hammers, saws, and occasional curses. My God, Billy breathes when you crest the final rise and see the lake spread before you. It's like a city of boats, Frank agrees. Harris surveys the scene with a practiced eye. We need to find a spot with good timber nearby, and we'll need to build a saw pit. A what, you ask? Saw pit. One man stands below, one above. You work a long saw between you to cut planks from logs, unless you've got money for the sawmill. You follow his gaze to where a steam-powered sawmill has been set up near the water's edge. A long line of men wait with logs, ready to pay exorbitant prices to have them cut into usable lumber. We'll do it ourselves, you decide. Money is running too short for luxuries. You find a spot about 100 yards from the shore, close to a stand of spruce trees suitable for boat building. By nightfall, you've established your final camp and secured your supplies. That evening, sitting by the fire, you try to process how far you've come, from Seattle to Dyer, up the Chilkoot Pass, across the lakes to Bennett, and all while carrying 1,000 pounds of supplies on your back, piece by piece. So we build boats next, you say to Harris. How long will that take? He considers. Depends how good we are. 2 weeks, maybe 3. Need to fell trees, cut planks, shape them, seal everything tight. It's not simple work. I'm a carpenter, you remind him. I know wood. Buildings don't float, he replies, but there's respect in his tone. Still, that'll help. And after the boats? Billy asks. After we build 'em, we ride 'em. Harris gestures northward, down the length of Lake Bennett. Lake leads to the Yukon River system. About 500 miles of water between here and Dawson City. Any more mountains to climb? Frank asks, rubbing his still aching shoulders. Nope, but there's the White Horse Rapids to get through. They've claimed plenty of boats and men. Of course there are rapids, you sigh. The next morning, boat building begins in earnest. First task, creating a saw pit. You and Frank dig a trench about 6 feet deep and 8 feet long, reinforcing the sides with logs to prevent collapse. This will allow one man to stand below while another stands above, working together to saw logs into planks. Next, you select suitable trees and begin the laborious process of felling them with axes and saws. Each tree must be limbed, cut to length, then lowered into the saw pit for processing into planks. It's exhausting work, but your carpentry skills prove valuable. Harris, who's built boats before, takes charge of the design. Nothing fancy, he explains. Flat-bottomed scow with a pointed bow. About 20 feet long, 5 feet wide, big enough for our outfits, but not too unwieldy for the rapids. Days pass in a blur of sawdust and sweat. Your hands blister, then callous over, then blister again. But the boat gradually takes shape. Frank proves surprisingly skilled with an axe, while Billy, though less physically strong, has a meticulous attention to detail that helps ensure the fit of each plank. All around you, similar scenes play out as hundreds of men race to build their vessels before the short northern summer ends. Not everyone knows what they're doing. You see boats taking shape that look unlikely to float even in calm water, let alone survive rapids. That one will sink within an hour, Harris predicts, nodding toward a particularly unfortunate construction nearby. Its builder, a former banker from Chicago, has used green wood that's already warping badly. Bennett develops its own economy and social life. Men with specialized skills offer their services for a fee. Temporary saloons serve overpriced whiskey. Gambling tents operate day and night. A few enterprising women have made the trek over the pass and now run restaurants or laundry services, charging astronomical rates that men gladly pay for a hot meal or clean clothes. News travels up and down the trail. More avalanches, more deaths on the Golden Stairs, ships arriving daily at Dyer and Skagway, disgorging hundreds more stampeders despite the lateness of the season, and rumours from downriver of rich strikes, of claims still open, of men finding nuggets the size of walnuts just lying in creek beds. Is it true, you ask Harris one night, are they really finding that much gold? He pokes the fire thoughtfully. Some are, most aren't. That's how it always goes. 2 weeks into the boat building, disaster strikes. A sudden storm blows in from the mountains, bringing driving rain that turns the entire shore into a muddy quagmire. Worse, the rising water threatens many of the camps and partially completed boats. You work through the night, moving your supplies to higher ground and securing your half-built boat with ropes and stakes. Others aren't so lucky. The storm claims dozens of boats and damages countless supply caches. One man near your camp loses nearly all his flour when his tent collapses in the mud. "That's it for me," he announces the next morning, surveying the sodden remains of his outfit. "I'm heading back to Seattle." After nearly 2 months of back-breaking labour to get this far, he's giving up. But you can't really blame him. Without adequate supplies, the Mounties won't let him continue to the gold fields. And even if they would, it would be a death sentence to attempt the winter without proper food and equipment. The storm delays your boat building by several days, but eventually you're back at work. The vessel takes shape plank by plank. Harris shows you how to caulk the seams with oakum, then seal them with pitch to make the boat watertight. "Green lumber's gonna shrink," he warns. "We'll need to check for leaks constantly once we're on the water." By the 3rd week, your boat is nearly complete. It's not beautiful, but it's solid and spacious enough for 4 men and their supplies. You've even added a small mast and sail, though Harris says the Yukon's current will do most of the work. "Just need a name now," Frank says, surveying your creation. "Tradition says it should be a lady's name," Harris offers. "Margaret," you suggest immediately, thinking of your sister whose loan made this journey possible. The others nod in agreement. "So the Margaret it is, your home and transportation for the next stage of the journey." As you put the finishing touches on the boat, you notice a commotion near the shoreline. A crowd has gathered around a new arrival, a man on horseback wearing the uniform of the Northwest Mounted Police. "What's happening?" you ask someone on the edge of the crowd. "Mounties brought news from Dawson," the man replies. "They're saying all the good claims are gone. Bonanza Creek, El Dorado, all staked solid." Your heart sinks. After all this effort to hear that the gold might already be claimed, you push your way closer to hear the Mountie directly. "It's true the original creeks are fully staked," he's saying to the anxious crowd, "but new discoveries are being made regularly. There's plenty of ground yet to prospect, and men are needed for work. Carpenters, in particular, can earn $15 a day in Dawson." $15 a day for carpentry work. That's more than you made in a week in Seattle. "So it's not all bad news," Frank says when you report back to your camp. "Might not find gold, but we won't starve. You agree?" The next day, you finish the Margaret. With considerable effort, the 4 of you drag her down to the water's edge and launch her into Lake Bennett. She floats, no obvious leaks. A small victory that feels enormous after weeks of labor. Now it's time to load your supplies. Everything must be carefully stowed to balance the boat and keep the cargo dry. It takes an entire day to load properly, securing items with ropes and canvas. That night, you're last on shore, you join other stampeders around a large bonfire. Men who were strangers weeks ago are now familiar faces. You've all shared the same trials, the same exhaustion, the same determination. Someone produces a fiddle, another has a harmonica. Music drifts across the lake as stars appear overhead. Men talk of what awaits in Dawson, the gold, the opportunities, the future. "We leave at first light," Harris announces as you return to your camp. 500 miles of river between us and Dawson. If all goes well, we'll be there in 2 weeks. "And if all doesn't go well?" Billy asks. Harris just shrugs. "Then we deal with that too." You lie awake, in your tent, listening to the lap of waves against the shore. Tomorrow you'll board the Margaret and commit yourself to the Yukon River. A journey through wilderness few white men have ever seen. You've already overcome so much. The mountain, the cold, the back-breaking labor, but something tells you that the river might present challenges all its own. Sleep eventually comes, bringing dreams of gold nuggets the size of walnuts just waiting to be picked up from creek beds. If only it could be that easy. Dawn breaks over Lake Bennett with a pink glow that turns the water to rose gold. A good omen, perhaps, or just pretty light on very cold water. You're already awake, too keyed up to sleep. Today you set sail on a boat you built with your own hands, heading into wilderness most folks will never see. All along the shoreline, other stampeders are making final preparations. Some boats have already pushed off, tiny against the vastness of the lake. One vessel catches your eye, an elaborate two-story affair with glass windows and what looks like a stove chimney poking through the roof. Or some people got more money than sense, Harris observes, following your gaze. Fancy boats just more weight to maneuver in the rapids, probably sink at the first rough water. Frank emerges from the tent, coughing that deep, worrying cough that hasn't improved since you left the coast. "You all right?" you ask. He waves off your concern. "Just the damp. I'll be fine once we get moving." Billy is the last to rise, still rubbing sleep from his eyes as you all share a breakfast of coffee and bacon. He's changed so much from the frightened bank clerk who boarded the ship in Seattle, leaner, quieter, with a determined set to his jaw that wasn't there before. "Ready to be gold miners?" he asks with a half smile. "Ready to stop carrying stuff on my back," Frank replies. The Margaret sits at the water's edge, loaded and waiting. She's not pretty, a flat-bottomed scow with a slightly pointed bow, rough-hewn planks sealed with pitch. But she's yours, and she'll float, and that's all that matters now. You push off just after sunrise, joining a loose flotilla of boats heading north across Lake Bennett. The lake stretches about 25 miles before narrowing into a river that will eventually become the mighty Yukon. The morning is calm, perfect for breaking in your sailing skills, which is fortunate since none of you really know what you're doing. "Keep her pointed straight," Harris instructs as you take the first turn at the steering oar, a long pole attached to the stern that serves as a rudder. Current's gentle here, but it'll get stronger. The boat feels alive beneath you, responding to each subtle movement of the oar. Your 1,000 pounds of supplies are carefully balanced and secured, making the Margaret ride low but stable in the water. Frank and Billy take turns at the small sail, adjusting it to catch the light breeze blowing north. Harris, who's done this journey before, keeps a careful eye on everything, offering advice and occasional corrections. "Look at that," Billy says quietly, gesturing toward the shoreline. Massive mountains rise on either side of the lake, snow-capped peaks reflecting in the still water. Spruce trees crowd the lower slopes, a deep green against the grey rock. The vastness of it makes you feel tiny, insignificant. "Makes Seattle seem awful crowded, doesn't it?" you reply. The first day passes peacefully, almost like a pleasure cruise. You make good progress, covering nearly 15 miles before making camp on a small island. Other boats cluster nearby, their campfires creating a string of lights along the shore as darkness falls. The second day brings your first challenge, a narrow channel connecting Bennett to the next lake in the chain. The current picks up here, pulling boats along at an alarming speed. Several vessels ahead of you run aground on sandbars or get caught in eddies, their crew shouting and pushing with poles to free themselves. "Keep to the centre," Harris calls as the Margaret enters the channel. "Watch the water patterns." You strain at the steering oar, feeling the current grab the boat and try to spin it sideways. Frank and Billy scramble to adjust the sail while Harris stands at the bow watching for obstacles. A boat just ahead of you isn't so lucky. It hits a submerged rock with a crack that echoes across the water. The vessel tilts alarmingly, taking on water as its crew frantically tries to bail. "Nothing we can do," Harris says when you instinctively move to help. "We stop to aid them. We'll end up on the rocks too." The cruel calculus of survival. You watch with a sick feeling as the stricken boat limps towards shore, half submerged, its crew desperately trying to save what supplies they can. "That could have been us," Billy says quietly. "Still could be," Harris replies. "We've got much worse water ahead." That night, camped on the shore of Tagish Lake, you hear distant thunder, but the sky is clear, stars scattered like gold dust across the darkness. "That's not thunder," Harris explains. "That's the White Horse Rapids. We're still a day away, but you can hear 'em." You lie awake, listening to that ominous rumble. The White Horse Rapids. Tapan Adney, a correspondent for Harper's Weekly, had written that no fewer than 40 drownings were credited to that stretch of water. Morning brings low clouds and a stiff breeze. Good for sailing, but concerning for what lies ahead. You make swift progress through Tagish Lake and into the narrower Marsh Lake. The banks close in. The current strengthens. That distant rumble grows steadily louder. By afternoon, you reach a small settlement perched on the riverbank just before the rapids. Tents and rough cabins cluster along the shore. Signs advertise the services of rapids pilots, experienced men who, for a hefty fee, will guide your boat through the treacherous water ahead. "Worth every penny," insists a red-bearded man who introduces himself as McPherson, a pilot who claims to have taken 50 boats through without a single loss. "She's a wicked stretch. 4 boats lost yesterday alone." Harris pulls you aside. He's not wrong about the danger. White Horse is the worst of it. A half-mile of pure hell, but we can scout it first, see the route for ourselves. "What do you think?" you ask. "Can we make it without a pilot?" Harris considers. "I've done it before, but I was younger then, and the water level changes daily. What worked last time might not work now." The sound of the rapids is now a constant roar. Along the shore, you can see the wrecks of boats that didn't make it. Splintered wood and scattered supplies, a grim gallery of failure. "Let's at least look before we decide," Frank suggests. The 4 of you hike alongside the river to a high point overlooking the rapids. The sight steals your breath. The Yukon, usually hundreds of feet wide, narrows suddenly to perhaps 60 feet. The water, squeezed through this bottleneck, transforms into a churning cauldron of white foam studded with black rocks. Standing waves rise 6 feet high, crashing down with enough force to smash a boat to kindling. "Jesus," Frank whispers. "They call it the White Horse because of those waves," Harris explains. "See how the tops look like white manes?" You watch as a boat enters the upper rapids. It's crewed by 4 men, all working frantically. 2 at oars, 1 with a long steering pole, 1 bailing water that crashes over the gunwales. The vessel bucks and twists in the current, nearly capsizing before somehow righting itself. The crew's shouts are lost in the roar, but their terrified expressions are clear even from your vantage point. Miraculously, they make it through, their boat shooting out of the lower rapids into calmer water. The crew collapses in visible relief. Another boat follows, this one guided by what must be one of the rapids' pilots. The passage is smoother, the boat taking a clear line between the worst obstacles. "I've changed my mind," you announce. "Let's hire McPherson." No one argues. The fee is steep. $50, a significant chunk of your dwindling funds, but as McPherson points out, you can't spend money if you're dead. We'll go first thing tomorrow, the pilot tells you. Water's usually calmest in early morning. Tonight, secure your boat well. River can rise 6 inches without warning. That night, camped with dozens of other nervous stampeders, you drink bad whiskey around a fire and listen to horror stories of the rapids. My brother went through last week, one man tells you. Said a boat just ahead of him hit a rock and flipped. 4 men in the water, supplies everywhere. Only 2 made it to shore. I heard they've started recovering bodies 20 miles downriver, adds another. Great, mutters Billy. Just what we needed to hear before bedtime. Sleep is elusive with the constant thunder of the rapids as backdrop. You lie awake wondering if the Margaret, your homemade vessel, can possibly survive such violence, if your carpentry skills will mean the difference between life and death. Dawn comes grey and misty. The river is slightly lower than yesterday, a good sign according to McPherson. You make final preparations, securing everything in the boat with extra ropes. Anything not tied down will be lost. Listen carefully, McPherson instructs as you push off from shore. I'll be at the steering oar. Thomas, you and Frank man the side oars. You'll need to pull hard when I shout. Billy, your job is bailing. River's going to come aboard. Guaranteed. Harris, keep watch at the bow for obstacles. The current grabs the Margaret immediately, pulling her toward the rapids with frightening speed. The roar grows deafening as you approach the first drop. Your hands tighten on the oar, knuckles white. Already, McPherson shouts, and pull right hard. You throw your weight into the oar as the boat plunges into the maelstrom. Water crashes over the bow, soaking you instantly. The cold steals your breath. The Margaret bucks like a living thing trying to break free of your control. Left, now! McPherson bellows. You and Frank switch direction, straining against the current. A massive rock slides past, close enough to touch. The boat drops into a trough, then rises on a wave that seems impossibly tall. Billy is bailing frantically, but water is coming in faster than he can throw it out. The Margaret is riding dangerously low, her gunnels just inches above the churning river. Straight ahead, pull together. The boat shoots between 2 standing waves, taking on more water. Something cracks, a plank strained beyond its limit. Harris shouts a warning, pointing at a whirlpool forming directly ahead. Right all your strength. Your muscles scream as you haul on the oar. The whirlpool slides past to port, its sucking vortex just missing your stern. And then, suddenly, you're through. The river widens, the current slows, the roar of the rapids fades behind you. The Margaret, though half filled with water, is intact and floating. McPherson lets out a whoop of triumph. Well done, boys, that was a clean run. You collapse against your oar, arms trembling with exhaustion and relief. Frank is coughing violently, his exertion having triggered another spell. Billy continues, bailing mechanically, as if unable to stop. Harris moves to check the leaking plank, stuffing a rag into the crack to slow the water ingress. We made it, you say, almost disbelieving. We actually made it. White Horse is the worst, McPherson assures you. 5 Finger Rapids still ahead, but they're gentle by comparison. You pay him his fee gladly once you reach shore at a small stopping point called Little Salmon. Here, McPherson will wait for more clients while you continue downriver. Good luck at the diggings, he says as he pockets your money. Hope you find what you're looking for. The next stretch of river is blessedly calm. The Yukon widens, its current steady but not threatening. The landscape changes, mountains giving way to rolling hills covered in spruce and birch. The air grows colder as you travel north, ice forming along the shoreline each morning. We need to keep moving, Harris warns. River starts freezing in October. Get caught between here and Dawson when that happens. We're in real trouble. Five Finger Rapids, when you reach them 3 days later, prove less terrifying than Whitehorse, but still dangerous. The river divides around 4 massive rock pillars, creating 5 channels, hence the name. Only one channel is safely navigable, requiring precise steering to thread the narrow gap. You make it through with only minor scrapes to the Margaret's hull. The relief is palpable, the last major obstacle between you and Dawson conquered. "How much further?" Billy asks that night as you camp along a wide, sandy stretch of shore. "About 200 miles, Harris estimates. Maybe a week with good current, and then we're gold miners," Frank says, his tone somewhere between disbelief and anticipation. "Then we find out if there's any gold left to mine," you correct him. The days blend together as you float steadily northward. The Yukon grows ever wider, sometimes stretching nearly a mile from bank to bank. The current remains your constant ally, carrying the Margaret along at a steady pace with minimal effort from your crew. Wildlife appears with increasing frequency. Moose wading in the shallows, bears fishing along the banks, eagles soaring overhead. The world feels pristine, untouched by human hands, except, of course, for the occasional wrecked boat or abandoned camp, reminders that hundreds of other gold seekers have passed this way before you. "Or river's different every year," Harris comments as you pass a vessel that ran aground on a sandbar. "What's deep water one season is a shoal the next. Maps help, but your eyes help more. The nights grow longer and colder. Ice forms thicker along the edges of the river each morning. Your breath clouds in the air even during midday. Winter is coming to the Yukon, and it's coming fast." On the 6th day, after 5 Finger Rapids, Frank's cough takes a worrying turn. He can barely manage an hour without doubling over in spasms that leave him gasping for breath. At night, you hear the wet rattle in his lungs. "It's nothing," he insists, "just a cold." But his face is flushed with fever, his eyes too bright. You exchange concerned glances with Harris and Billy. "Dawson has doctors," Harris says quietly when Frank is asleep. "Good ones, charging gold rush prices, but good." You nod, pressing for more speed each day, pushing longer hours on the river. Frank needs medicine, proper care. Each mile feels crucial now. On the morning of the 7th day, Billy spots smoke on the horizon. "Could be a forest fire," Harris says, squinting northward. "Too concentrated," you reply, "and look, there's too much of it in a line." As you draw closer, the source becomes clear. Steamboat stacks, cabins with chimneys, the smoke of a settlement, a sizable one. "Dawson," Harris confirms with a nod. "We made it, boys." The current carries you around a final bend, and there it is spread before you, a sprawling town nestled at the confluence of the Yukon and Klondike rivers. Wooden buildings line muddy streets. Tents and cabins spill up the hillsides. Steamboats are docked along the waterfront. Smoke rises from hundreds of chimneys into the clear autumn air. "My God," Billy whispers, "it's a real city." After months of wilderness, the sight of civilization, even this rough frontier version, is overwhelming. Streets, buildings, people everywhere. You guide the Margaret toward the waterfront, joining dozens of other boats tying up at the makeshift docks. The shoreline is chaos. Men unloading supplies, traders hawking goods, dogs barking, hammers pounding as new arrivals immediately begin building winter shelter. "Dawson City," Harris announces as the Margaret bumps against the dock. End of the line. Frank manages to stand, leaning heavily on the mast. "We need to stake our claims," he insists between coughs. "You need a doctor," you counter, securing the boat to the dock. "Claims can wait." As you help Frank ashore, a well-dressed man approaches. His clean appearance and unweathered face mark him immediately as someone who didn't come in over the Chilkoot. "Just arrived?" he asks, tipping his hat. Jack Morrison, Dawson Daily News. Where are you boys from? Seattle, you reply. But our friend needs medical attention. Where can we find a doctor? Morrison points toward a large tent with a red cross painted on the canvas. Dr. Wilson set up there? Best sawbones in Dawson, but I should warn you, nothing's cheap here. What about claims? Billy asks eagerly. Is there still gold to be found? Morrison's expression turns sympathetic. Bonanza and Eldorado creeks were staked solid months ago. Some new strikes on Dominion and Sulphur creeks, but they're filling up fast. Truth is, boys, most of the good ground was claimed last year. Your heart sinks. After everything, the mountain, the rapids, the endless labor, to arrive too late. But, Morrison continues, men with skills are making fortunes here without ever mining an ounce. Carpenters especially. Town's growing so fast, builders can't keep up. You exchange glances with Harris. A carpenter, that's you. Let's get Frank to the doctor, you decide. Then we'll figure out our next steps. You help Frank toward the medical tent, his weight heavy against your shoulder, his breath coming in laboured gasps. Behind you, Dawson City bustles with activity, the Paris of the North, some are calling it, your destination for so long and now finally reached. But as you step onto the muddy street, you realise something important. This isn't the end of your journey, it's just the beginning of a different one. Dr. Wilson's tent smells of carbolic acid and wood smoke. The floor is wooden planks laid directly on frozen mud. A small stove in the corner barely cuts the chill. 3 men occupy cots along one wall, all with injuries or ailments that make your stomach turn. What seems to be the trouble? Dr. Wilson doesn't look up from washing his hands in a basin. He's a compact man with a neatly trimmed beard going grey at the edges. His clothes are remarkably clean for Dawson. Frank answers with a coughing fit that nearly doubles him over. That gets the doctor's attention. How long has this been going on? He asks, guiding Frank to a stool. Started on the ship, you answer. Got worse on the trail. Past week, it's been bad. The doctor presses a stethoscope to Frank's chest, listening carefully as he instructs him to breathe. His expression grows more serious with each passing moment. Pneumonia, he announces finally, quite advanced. You've pushed yourself too hard for too long, young man. Frank tries to stand. Just needs some medicine. We've got claims to stake. Sit down, Dr. Wilson says firmly. The only claim you'll be staking is in the cemetery if you don't rest. That fluid in your lungs needs to drain or you'll drown from the inside. The blunt diagnosis silences the room. What can we do, you ask? He needs bed rest, warm, dry shelter, plenty of fluids. I can give him something for the cough and the fever, but the body must heal itself. The doctor begins mixing a powder in a small envelope. That'll be $5 for the consultation and medicine. $5. In Seattle, that would be outrageous for a doctor's visit. Here, it seems almost reasonable. We need to find lodging, Harris says, as you exit the medical tent, supporting Frank between you and Billy. Proper lodging, not tents. Winter's coming fast. He's right. Though it's only September, there's a permanent chill in the air. The muddy streets of Dawson are already starting to freeze at night. Everyone you pass is preparing for the long northern winter. What about money? Billy asks the question you're all thinking. We came to mine gold, not pay for rooms. One problem at a time, you reply. First, we secure the Margaret and our supplies, then find Frank somewhere to recover, then figure out our next steps. The waterfront is a maze of boats and makeshift docks. You manage to find a spot to secure the Margaret, where she seems relatively safe from ice damage or theft. Unloading your supplies is another challenge. Everything must be carried up the steep, muddy bank to the street level. By late afternoon, exhausted and muddy, you've moved your essential supplies to a pile on Front Street. Frank is barely standing, leaning against the stack of crates and sacks. We need shelter now, Harris decides. I'm going to ask around. While he's gone, you take stock of your surroundings. Dawson City is unlike any place you've ever seen. The streets form a rough grid, but that's where any similarity to a proper city ends. Buildings are a chaotic mix of proper wooden structures, hasty log cabins, canvas tents with wooden frames and everything in between. Signs advertise saloons, restaurants, hotels, outfitters, assay offices, and countless other businesses catering to the gold rush. People crowd the muddy streets, a striking contrast of new arrivals like yourselves, still dirty from the trail, and established residents in relatively clean clothes. Native people move among them, selling furs and handcrafted items. Dogs are everywhere, some harnessed to sleds or small carts, others just wandering. And the noise, hammers pounding as new buildings rise, men shouting as they haul goods, music spilling from saloons, the constant background hum of a town that didn't exist a few years ago and now houses thousands. This place is madness, Billy observes, wide-eyed. Harris returns, looking grim. Lodging scarce and expensive, $20 a night for a room at the hotel, $10 for a bunk in a shared cabin, even tent space is going for $5. That's robbery, you protest. That's supply and demand, Harris counters. There are still ships arriving daily. Everyone needs shelter before winter. What about building our own? Billy suggests. We've got tools. Thomas is a carpenter. Lumber's worth its weight in gold here, Harris says. And we'd never finish before the deep freeze hits. You're contemplating your dwindling options when a woman approaches. She's perhaps 50, with steel grey hair pulled back severely and a no-nonsense expression that reminds you of your sister. You boys just arrive? She asks, eyeing your pile of supplies. Yes, ma'am, you reply. Got a sick one, I see. She nods toward Frank, who's now sitting on a crate, head in his hands. I'm Martha Wilkes. I run a boarding house 2 streets over. Pleased to meet you, Mrs. Wilkes. I'm Thomas Reed. This is Billy Daniels, Frank Porter, and Harris. Just Harris, Harris adds with a half smile. You boys look like you need lodging, Mrs. Wilkes continues. I've got a room, usually charge $15 a night, but... She studies Frank again. I'll do 10 if you're willing to share. 2 beds, stove, wash basin, clean sheets, which is more than most places can say. It's still expensive, but you can hear winter in the wind. Frank needs shelter, and Mrs. Wilkes seems honest, which counts for plenty in a boom town. We'll take it, you decide, but we can't pay for long without work. Mrs. Wilkes nods. Then you'd best find work fast. Winter's no time to be homeless in the Yukon. Her boarding house is a well-built 2-story structure on 2nd Street. Inside, it's surprisingly cozy. Oil lamps, patterned wallpaper, actual furniture. Your room is small but clean, with 2 narrow beds, a cast-iron stove, and a window overlooking the street. Meals are extra, Mrs. Wilkes informs you. $1 for breakfast, $2 for dinner. No lunch served. Bathrooms down the hall. No spitting, fighting, or women visitors. She gives Frank a critical look. Get him into bed. I'll bring up some hot water and broth. Once she's gone, you help Frank onto one of the beds. His skin burns with fever. His breathing shallow and rapid. We need to earn money, Harris says, stating the obvious. Fast. Tomorrow, you reply. Tonight, we get settled and figure out our options. Mrs. Wilkes proves to be a better nurse than her stern demeanour suggests. She brings not just broth, but also willow bark tea for Frank's fever and extra blankets against the deepening chill. Pneumonia's no joke up here, she tells you. Lost my husband to it our first winter. Make sure he drinks plenty and stays warm. That night, as Frank sleeps fitfully and the others settle in, you stare out the window at the lights of Dawson. So many hopes, including your own, pinned on this remote outpost at the edge of the world. So much effort just to reach it. And now, the real test begins. Morning brings a clear, cold sky and a fresh determination. You leave Billy to watch over Frank while you and Harris set out to explore the town and seek opportunities. Dawson by daylight is even more fascinating. The streets teem with activity, freight being unloaded, buildings rising, businesses operating at full tilt. You pass stores selling goods at prices that make you wince. Eggs for $1 each, potatoes $10 a pound. Basic tools marked up 5 times what they'd cost in Seattle. Gold dust is the currency here, Harris explains as you watch a man pay for supplies by pouring yellow flakes from a pouch onto a scale. Paper money's accepted, but everything's priced in gold weight. The mining recording office is your first stop, a large wooden building with a line stretching out the door and down the street. Men wait patiently to register claims or check the status of available creek frontage. Might as well ask, you suggest. The clerk inside is harried but efficient. When you inquire about available claims, he barely looks up from his ledger. Bonanza and Eldorado were staked solid last year, he confirms. Dominion and Sulphur are mostly taken, some ground still open on Hunker and Gold Bottom. But it's far out, and likely not worth much. $20 to record a claim if you find one. What about work in the mines? Harris asks. Hiring any labourers? Some of the big operations are, the clerk replies. Pays about $15 a day for underground work. Hard labour, dangerous conditions. If you've got other skills, you might do better elsewhere. Outside, Harris looks thoughtful. $15 a day isn't bad money. For working underground in permafrost? No thanks. You've heard enough stories about tunnel collapses to know that's not for you. I'm a carpenter. The newspaperman said builders are in demand. Your next stop is a lumber yard near the edge of town. Stacks of rough-cut spruce and pine lumber are selling for astronomical prices, 10 times what you'd pay in Seattle. The yard's owner, a barrel-chested man named Sorensen, is supervising the unloading of fresh logs from a barge. Looking for work? He asks when you introduce yourself. I need men who know wood. I'm a carpenter by trade, you tell him. Built houses in Seattle for 10 years. Sorensen looks you up and down appraisingly. Can you handle a crew? I've led 3-man teams on house builds. Good enough. He extends a hand. $15 a day to start. Sunrise to sunset. I've got more orders for cabins and business buildings than I can handle. Winters come in and half this town's still living under canvas. Just like that, you have a job. The same wage miners make for breaking their backs underground, but working with wood, something you actually know and enjoy. What about you? Sorensen asks Harris. You know lumber? Harris shakes his head. I'm a miner, but I'll find something. You part ways, agreeing to meet back at the boarding house by evening. Harris heads toward the saloons, where labour recruiters often look for workers. You follow Sorensen to a construction site on King Street, where the frame of a large building is taking shape. Saloon and hotel, Sorensen explains. Owners paying triple for rush completion before hard freeze. Can you start now? By noon, you're leading a team of 4 men, none with formal carpentry training, but all eager to learn. By sunset, you've made significant progress on the wall framing. Sorensen pays you in gold dust, $15 worth, weighed carefully on a small scale. Be back at sunrise, he says. And if you know any other real carpenters, send them my way. You walk back to the boarding house with gold dust in your pocket and a strange mix of emotions. You came all this way to find gold in the ground, yet here you are, earning it with the same skills you had in Seattle. There's irony there, but also reassurance. You may not strike it rich, but you won't starve either. At the boarding house, you find Harris already returned, sitting with Billy at Frank's bedside. Found work at the Northern Saloon, Harris announces. Tending bar, $10 a day plus tips. He doesn't look thrilled. Temporary. Still planning to try my luck at mining come spring. How is he? You ask, nodding toward Frank, who appears to be sleeping. Fever's down a bit, Billy reports. Mrs. Wilkes has been checking on him, says he needs at least 2 weeks of rest. What about you? You ask Billy. Any thoughts on work? The former bank clerk looks uncertain. I'm not much use with tools or physical labour, but I can count and keep books. Plenty of businesses need that, Harris suggests. Start asking around tomorrow. That night, you divvy up your first earnings to pay Mrs. Wilkes for room and board. Even after that, you have enough left to feel the weight of gold in your pocket. It's a good feeling after months of watching your funds dwindle. The next few days fall into a pattern. You work sunrise to sunset at Sorensen's construction sites, learning the peculiarities of building in the far north. The ground is permanently frozen, just inches below the surface. Permafrost, they call it. Buildings can't have conventional foundations or they'll sink when the top layer thaws in summer. Instead, structures are built on wooden pilings or rock footings that sit atop the permafrost. Whole town shifts and groans with the seasons, Sorensen tells you. Build too rigid and the walls crack come spring. Billy finds work at the assay office where his meticulous nature and experience with numbers prove valuable. He earns $12 daily, helping miners weigh and register their gold findings. Harris continues tending bar, but spends his free time talking with miners, learning which claims are producing and which aren't. His gold fever hasn't abated despite the realities of Dawson. Frank slowly improves. After a week, he's able to sit up and take short walks around the boarding house. After 2, he's asking about work, though Dr. Wilson still advises against anything strenuous. Maybe I could help at one of the stores, Frank suggests. Something indoors, out of the cold. Rest more first, you insist. We're covering the room and board. The work is plentiful and the pay is good, but expenses in Dawson are staggering. A decent meal in a restaurant costs $5. A bottle of whiskey, $20. Basic tools and supplies sell for many times their value. Outside, as the locals refer to the world beyond the Yukon. One evening, about 3 weeks after your arrival, Harris bursts into the room with unusual excitement. I've got us a chance, he announces. Partial claim on Hunker Creek. Guy named Peterson is selling half interest for $800. Says it's producing $20 to $30 a day. You eye him skeptically. If it's producing that well, why sell? He needs capital for equipment before winter sets in, wants to sink a deep shaft, chase the pay streak underground. Harris paces the small room. I've asked around. Peterson's straight, not known for salting claims or other tricks. This could be our chance to actually mine, like we came here to do. The 4 of you discuss it late into the night. $800 is a fortune, far more than your combined savings. But if the claim is legitimate, it could pay back quickly. We could pool what we've saved, Billy suggests. Make a down payment, pay the rest from production, or stick with sure wages, you counter. No guarantees in mining. We didn't come all this way to pound nails, Harris argues. I say we at least look at the claim, see if it's worth pursuing. The next day is Sunday, your only day off. Harris arranges for Peterson to take you to Hunker Creek, about 12 miles from Dawson. Frank insists on coming despite his lingering weakness. Peterson meets you at the edge of town with a dog sled. 6 powerful huskies harnessed to a wooden sledge. The ground has frozen solid enough for good sledding, though there's only a dusting of snow. Dogs can pull all 4 of you, Peterson assures you. Climb on and hold tight. The ride is smoother than expected once you're clear of town. The dogs maintain a steady pace, following the well-travelled trail to the creek. Peterson stands at the back, using a long pole to steer and occasionally brake on downhill stretches. "Worked 40 mile before the Klondike strike," he tells you over his shoulder, referring to an older mining district. "Been up here 8 years now. Got a good eye for promising ground." Hunker Creek, when you reach it, is a narrow waterway winding through a shallow valley. Unlike your mental image of prospectors panning in rushing streams, the creek is now mostly frozen. Along its length, men work at various types of mining operations, some still washing gravel in pans or sluice boxes where they've broken through the ice, others focused on digging shafts into the banks. Peterson's claim is about halfway up the creek, a standard 500-foot section along the waterway. A small cabin sits on the bank, smoke curling from its chimney. Nearby, a shaft disappears into the ground, its entrance framed with timber. "That's the summer operation," Peterson explains, pointing to a simple sluice setup near the water. "Now we're going underground to follow the pay streak. Gold's not in the creek itself. It's in an ancient stream bed buried under 20 to 40 feet of frozen gravel." He leads you into the cabin where his partner, a quiet Norwegian named Larsen, has coffee brewing on a small stove. The cabin is crude but solid, with 2 bunks, a table, and basic cooking equipment. "I'll show you what we've been finding," Peterson says, producing a small leather pouch from inside his coat. He pours its contents onto the table. Gold. Not the fine dust you've seen being used for purchases in town, but small nuggets and flakes, easily several ounces worth. "That's about a week's work," Peterson tells you. "Stream's been good to us, but to really work it right, we need a windlass, more timber for shoring, a better stove for thawing ground." The mining technique, Peterson explains, is dictated by the frozen ground. In summer, they can work the surface gravels. In winter, they sink shafts to the pay streak, then build fires to thaw the frozen gravel in small sections. The thawed material is hauled to the surface and stockpiled until spring, when it can be washed to separate the gold. "It's slow, but it works," Peterson assures you. "With proper equipment and 4 more hands, we could double or triple production." After coffee, he takes you to the shaft. It's about 30 feet deep, accessed by a notched log ladder. At the bottom, a tunnel extends horizontally, following what Peterson claims is the richest part of the pay streak. Harris is visibly excited, asking detailed questions about gold recovery and ground conditions. Frank, still weak, stays mostly silent but watches everything carefully. Billy seems overwhelmed by the technical aspects but impressed by the gold you've been shown. You've worked with enough wood to recognize that the shaft is well constructed but needs better reinforcement for safety. The operation seems legitimate, but something feels off. On the return journey to Dawson, the 4 of you sit huddled on the sled, discussing in low voices, while Peterson focuses on his dogs. "I think it's a fair deal," Harris insists. "We put in 200 each, make Peterson a down payment, work the claim through winter, pay the rest from production." Why's he really selling, you ask? If that shaft is hitting good pay, no miner would give up half unless something's wrong. He explained, needs capital for equipment, Harris counters. Makes perfect sense. Maybe, you concede. But I've built enough houses to know when someone's hiding structural problems, something about this deal feels patched together. Frank, huddled beneath an extra blanket, speaks up for the first time. "Did you notice Larsen never said a word, not one word about how great their claim is? It's a good observation. The silent partner had indeed been notably silent about the claim's potential." "We need to ask around town," Billy suggests. "See if anyone else knows about this claim or Peterson's reputation." That evening, while Harris returns to the saloon where he works, you visit several other establishments, casually asking about Peterson and mining on Hunker Creek. What you learn is concerning. Peterson has indeed been in the Yukon for years, but has a reputation for selling shares in claims that mysteriously stop producing after the money changes hands. Nothing provable, just a pattern that's raised eyebrows. Hunker's got good gold, one grizzled miner tells you at the Monte Carlo saloon, but it ain't no bonanza. Anyone promising $30 a day regular is likely showing you someone else's cleanup. When you report back to the others, Harris is defensive. That's just talk. Jealous miners trying to keep newcomers away from good ground. Maybe you allow, but $800 is everything we have and more. We can't afford to gamble it on someone with a questionable reputation. The debate continues for days. Harris remains convinced the claim is legitimate. Frank, perhaps because of his brush with mortality, urges caution. Billy wavers, tempted by the gold you were shown but nervous about the investment. You're torn. You came all this way to mine gold, not build structures for others. Yet your carpentry skills are providing a steady, reliable income in a place where little is reliable. One afternoon, about a week after your visit to Hunker Creek, you return from work to find the boarding house in an uproar. Mrs. Wilkes meets you at the door, her usual composure shaken. Your friend Harris is gone, she announces. Packed his things and left a note. The others are upstairs. You find Frank and Billy in your room, both looking grim. Billy hands you a folded piece of paper. "Boys," it reads in Harris's rough handwriting, "I've made a deal with Peterson, using my share of our outfit as down payment. I know this claim is good, not asking you to join anymore, but the offer's open if you change your minds. I've seen 3 rushes come and go. Won't miss my chance this time." Harris. You sit heavily on your bed, the note dangling from your fingers. "He left this morning," Frank says quietly. "Took his personal gear and his share of supplies. After everything, the mountain crossing, the boat building, the river journey, your little group has fractured. Harris, the experienced one, the guide who helped get you this far, has chosen gold fever over caution. What do we do now?" Billy asks. You fold the note carefully, tucking it into your pocket. Outside the window, the first real snow of the season is beginning to fall. Winter is arriving in earnest. Soon the Yukon will freeze solid, isolating Dawson until spring breakup. "We survive," you answer simply. "We work, we save, we get through winter. Come spring," you trail off, looking toward the window where white flakes spiral down from a leaden sky. "Come spring, we'll see what the Klondike has to offer us." Winter in Dawson doesn't creep in gradually. It pounces like a predator. One day you're walking to work in merely uncomfortable cold. The next, it's 40 below zero and your breath freezes into ice crystals that cling to your beard. The Yukon River, so recently filled with boats, transforms overnight into a solid highway of ice. The ground hardens like iron. Buildings creak and groan as their timbers contract in the cold. "Welcome to the real Yukon," Sorensen tells you as you warm your hands by the stove in his office. This is just getting started. Wait till January when it hits 60 below. You've been in Dawson for 6 weeks now. October has given way to November and darkness is winning its battle against daylight. The sun appears for only a few hours each day, crawling reluctantly along the southern horizon before surrendering to night again. Harris has been gone for 3 weeks. No word, no sightings. It's as if Hunker Creek swallowed him whole. "Should we check on him?" Billy asks one evening as the 3 of you huddle in your room at Mrs. Wilkes's boarding house. The stove pumps out heat, but the window is rimmed with frost on the inside. He made his choice, Frank replies. His health has improved greatly, though the pneumonia left him thinner, his voice rougher. He's found work as a clerk at the Northern Commercial Company, the largest store in Dawson. Indoor work, as the doctor recommended. Besides, you add, Hunker's a half-day journey each way. We've all got jobs now. Your carpentry work has evolved as winter deepened. No more exterior construction until spring. Now you're fitting interiors, building furniture, crafting doors and window frames, all within heated structures. Sorensen has raised your pay to $18 a day, recognizing your skills are worth the premium. Billy continues at the assay office, where his meticulous record-keeping has made him indispensable. His paycheck has increased to $15 daily. You're all earning good money, but Dawson devours dollars faster than you can make them. Everything must be shipped in over mountain passes or up the Yukon during the brief summer shipping season. Now that the river is frozen, prices climb weekly as supplies dwindle. A loaf of bread $1, fresh eggs $2 each, a decent winter coat $100 or more. The mathematics of survival require constant calculation. I heard another man froze to death last night, Billy says, pulling his blanket tighter around his shoulders. Found him this morning outside the Monte Carlo. They say he was drunk, fell asleep in a snowbank. Fourth one this month, Frank notes grimly. Death is Dawson's constant companion as winter deepens. Men freeze when caught in sudden blizzards or after too much whiskey. Scurvy appears among those who didn't properly prepare with vegetable supplies. Cabin fever drives some to violence or madness. The cemetery on the hill grows steadily, yet life continues with surprising vigor. Dawson refuses to hibernate. Ever seen anything like it? You ask Mrs. Wilkes one morning as you shovel the path to her front door. The thermometer reads 30 below, but the streets are still busy with men hauling goods, miners heading to or from their claims, dog teams pulling sleds loaded with supplies or firewood. Nothing stops gold, she replies, wrapping her shawl tighter. Not even winter. Mrs. Wilkes has become something of a surrogate mother to your diminished group. Her stern exterior hides a practical kindness. She makes sure you're properly dressed for the cold, offers advice on avoiding frostbite, even darns your socks when she thinks you're not looking. You've learned her story in fragments over shared meals. She came north with her husband during an earlier, smaller rush at 40 Mile. When he died of pneumonia, she stayed, eventually establishing this boarding house in the early days of Dawson. She owns the building outright, one of the few women in town to have independent property and business. You boys are lucky, she tells you one evening as you share dinner in her kitchen. Most who came over the passes this summer are living in tents or shacks, burning through their supplies too fast. They'll be starving by February. Are we still getting supply ships before spring? Frank asks. Mrs. Wilkes shakes her head. River's frozen solid. Nothing gets in till May at the earliest. What's here is all we have. This grim reality hangs over Dawson. Despite the wild prosperity of the gold-rich claims, the town exists on a knife edge of potential disaster. If the food supplies run critically low, no amount of gold dust will fill empty stomachs. Thankfully, the Northwest Mounted Police anticipated this problem. They've been strict about the one-year supply requirement for stampeders, turning back anyone attempting to enter without adequate provisions. This foresight may save thousands from starvation. December arrives with deepening cold and near constant darkness. The sun appears for just a few hours each day, painting the snow with pale golden light before surrendering again to the long night. Northern lights dance across the sky in ghostly ribbons of green and blue. Work continues despite the brutal conditions. The demand for skilled carpentry never diminishes. You've gained a reputation as one of the best woodworkers in Dawson, with wealthy claim owners requesting you specifically for their projects. One such project brings unexpected news. You're installing cabinetry in a newly constructed home belonging to Victor Kelsey, one of the original discoverers on Bonanza Creek. His claim has produced over $400,000 in gold already, an almost unimaginable fortune. Beautiful work, Kelsey comments, running his hand along the smooth curve of a drawer front you've just fitted. Where'd you learn your trade? Seattle, you reply. 10 years building houses before the crash. Lucky for me, the economy went bad, or you'd never have come north. He chuckles, then adds, heard some news you might find interesting. Fellow at the recording office mentioned some partners had a dispute over a claim on Hunker Creek. Peterson and someone called Harris. Your hands freeze in mid-motion. Harris? What happened? Usual story. Claim didn't produce as promised. New partner accused Peterson of salting the samples. Peterson denied it. Almost came to gunplay from what I heard. And then, you prompt when Kelsey pauses. Then nothing. Just another Dawson dispute. Recording office gets a dozen like it every week. That night, you share the news with Frank and Billy. Should we go out there? Billy asks immediately. See if he needs help? Frank shakes his head. Harris made his bed. And he's not exactly helpless. Been through more northern winters than the three of us combined. Still, you say, he travelled with us for months, got us here safely, then took off with his share of our outfit the minute gold fever hit him again, Frank reminds you, a hard edge to his voice. The truth hangs uncomfortable between you. Harris's departure felt like betrayal, especially after all you'd been through together. Yet you can't help worrying about the man who guided you over the Chilkoot Pass and down the Yukon. I'll ask around, you decide, discreetly, see what else I can learn. Christmas approaches, bringing a strange mix of frontier festivity and homesickness to Dawson. You find yourself thinking of Margaret and her family back in Seattle. You've sent letters when possible, but mail service is unreliable in winter. They might not even know you've reached Dawson safely. The saloons and dance halls do booming business as men seek refuge from the cold and the loneliness. Gold dust flows across bars like water. The lucky ones with producing claims spend lavishly, while those less fortunate nurse their drinks and dream of spring. You continue asking about Harris whenever opportunities arise. The story comes together in pieces, none of them encouraging. The claim on Hunker Creek produced some gold initially, but far less than Peterson had suggested. When Harris confronted him, Peterson claimed that mining is always a gamble, that no guarantees were made. The argument escalated until the Mounties were called to prevent violence. And now, you ask Jim Dawkins, a freighter who regularly travels between Dawson and the outlying creeks. Peterson's moved on, heard he's trying to sell shares in a claim over on Dominion now? Dawkins shrugs. Your friend Harris is still working the Hunker claim, far as I know. Living in a cabin with some Swedish fellas. At least he's alive and sheltered. The knowledge brings some relief. Christmas Eve arrives with a celebration that defies the brutal cold outside. Mrs. Wilkes prepares a special dinner for her boarders, canned ham with preserved vegetables, dried apple pie, and even a small bottle of blackberry wine she's been saving for a special occasion. To absent friends and family, she toasts, raising her glass. May they be safe and warm. You drink to that thinking of Margaret, of Harris, of the thousands of other stampeders scattered across the Klondike, all chasing the same golden dream. After dinner, the three of you join the crowds on Front Street, where bonfires have been lit and men gather to sing carols, share whiskey, and pretend for a moment that they're not thousands of miles from home in the darkest, coldest place imaginable. The temperature has dropped to 50 below. At this extreme cold, strange things happen. Metal sticks to bare skin, wood becomes brittle as glass, the snow squeaks loudly underfoot, exposed flesh can freeze in minutes. Yet the celebrations continue. A group of miners has rigged up a Christmas tree of sorts, a spruce draped with gold nuggets, ribbons and small bottles of whiskey as ornaments. Men take turns shouting toasts to the crowd, their breath forming clouds of ice crystals in the firelight. "To the Klondike," someone calls. "May she yield up all her treasure." "To the spring thaw," shouts another. "May it come before we all go mad." You're about to suggest returning to the warmth of Mrs. Wilkes's house when a commotion erupts near the Monte Carlo saloon. A dog team has arrived, the animals frosted with ice, their driver similarly encrusted. Men gather around as the newcomer staggers from his sled. "News from outside," someone shouts. "He's brought mail." The driver, bundled so thoroughly that only his eyes are visible, confirms this with a nod. "Special Christmas run from Skagway," he announces, his voice muffled by layers of scarves, mail and newspapers. The crowd surges forward. News from the outside world is as precious as gold in winter-isolated Dawson. You join the rush, heart suddenly pounding at the thought of word from home. The mail distribution is chaotic but surprisingly efficient. A Mountie takes charge, calling out names from bundled letters. By some miracle, there's one for you, the envelope addressed in Margaret's neat handwriting. You retreat to the relative quiet of a storefront porch to read it, hands shaking with more than cold as you carefully open the envelope. The letter is dated October 15th, already more than 2 months old. Margaret writes that they're all well, that Robert's carpentry business has improved slightly with the economy, that the children ask about you constantly. She's received your earlier letters describing the journey to Dyer and over the Chilkoot, but nothing since. "We pray daily for your safety," she writes. "The newspapers are full of stories about the hardships in the Klondike. Please tell us you're well and that this mad adventure has been worth the risk. Has it been worth it, standing in the bitter cold of a Yukon winter, thousands of miles from home, without a single gold claim to your name? You're not sure how to answer." The letter concludes with news that hits you like a physical blow. Father passed away in September. A stroke, the doctor said. It was quick and he felt little pain. He spoke of you near the end, Thomas. Said he was proud of your courage, even if he thought your gold-seeking foolish. Your father. Gone. And you, chasing gold in the frozen north, weren't there to say goodbye. You fold the letter carefully, tucking it inside your coat, close to your heart. Around you, other men are having similar moments, reading precious words from home, faces reflecting joy or sorrow or something in between. The cold suddenly feels more penetrating. You make your way back to the boarding house, the celebrations continuing behind you, now a discordant noise against your grief. Frank and Billy are already back when you arrive, warming themselves by the stove. One look at your face tells them something's wrong. "My father died," you say simply, "back in September." They both know what it means, that you weren't there, couldn't be there, might not have come if you'd known. "I'm sorry, Thomas," Frank says, the usual edge gone from his voice. Truly. That night, sleep eludes you. You stare at the frost patterns on the window, thinking about paths taken and not taken, the gold that drew you north, the family left behind, the man you were in Seattle and the man you've become in this harsh, beautiful, terrible place. The next day, Christmas, dawns clear and brutally cold. The thermometer outside Mrs. Wilkes's kitchen window reads 60 below zero. At this temperature, the air itself seems to crystallize. Each breath feels like inhaling shards of glass. Work has stopped for the holiday. Most of Dawson sleeps late, nursing hangovers from the previous night's celebrations. You rise early, restless with thoughts of home and loss. Mrs. Wilkes finds you in the kitchen, staring into a cup of coffee. "Bad news in your letter?" she asks, her usual brusqueness softened with genuine concern. "My father died while I was on the trail here." She nods, understanding without need for further explanation. "Many have lost family while chasing dreams up here. It's the price we pay." "Is it worth it?" you ask suddenly. All this madness, the cold, the isolation, the risk. Does anyone really win? Mrs. Wilkes considers this as she stokes the kitchen stove. "Some find gold," she says finally. "Some find themselves. Some find nothing but hardship. But we all find something." "What did you find?" you ask. A ghost of a smile crosses her face. "Independence. After my husband died, I could have gone back to Oregon, lived with my sister. Instead, I built this place, my place." She gestures around the kitchen. "In Dawson, no one cares that I'm a widow. No one expects me to remarry or fit some mold. I'm just Mrs. Wilkes, who runs the best boarding house on 2nd Street. Her words stay with you as Christmas Day unfolds. Frank and Billy rise late. You share a simple breakfast, exchange small gifts, a new notebook for Billy, hand-carved pipe for Frank, woolen socks for you. Practical things, frontier gifts. In the afternoon, a knock at the door reveals an unexpected visitor. Bundled almost beyond recognition, beard and eyebrows white with frost, stands Harris. For a moment, no one speaks. Then Mrs. Wilkes breaks the silence. "Don't let all the heat out," she scolds, pulling Harris inside. "And stomp those boots before you track snow everywhere." Harris complies automatically, then slowly unwraps layers of scarves from his face. He looks older, more weathered than when he left. His eyes have that hollow look that comes from disappointment. "Merry Christmas, boys," he says finally. "Thought I'd check if you were still in town." Frank stands, his expression guarded. "Heard you had some trouble with Peterson." Harris grimaces. "Man's a snake. Claim barely produces $5 a day. Samples he showed us came from someone else's cleanup." He sighs heavily. "Been working it anyway. Not much choice now." "You're welcome to join us for Christmas dinner," Mrs. Wilkes announces. "I've got a pot of moose stew that'll warm you proper." Over dinner, Harris fills in the gaps of his story. The claim was indeed salted, seeded with outside gold to make it appear more valuable. By the time he realized the deception, Peterson had vanished with Harris's payment. The cabin he shares with 2 Swedish miners is cold, drafty, and far from town. Spring comes. "I'll try again somewhere else," Harris says, but the old confidence is missing from his voice. "Maybe Dominion Creek. Heard they're finding good color there." You study the man who guided you over the Chilkoot, who helped you build the Margaret, who abandoned you for a flash of gold. "There's carpentry work in town if you want it," you offer finally. "Sorensen's always looking for experienced hands." Harris looks up, surprise and something like gratitude in his eyes. "Might take you up on that. Mining's a young man's game anyway." After dinner, as Harris prepares to leave, refusing Mrs. Wilkes's offer to stay the night, saying he needs to get back to his cabin partners, you walk him to the door. "You were right," he admits quietly. "About Peterson. Should have listened. We all make choices." You reply. "It's what happens after that matters." Harris nods, re-wrapping his scarves against the brutal cold outside. Spring's coming eventually. Always does, even in the Yukon. You watch as he trudges away into the darkness, a solitary figure soon swallowed by swirling snow, another stampeder whose golden dreams have frozen in the Klondike winter. Back inside, you join Frank and Billy by the stove. Outside, the temperature continues to drop. The long Arctic night wraps around Dawson like a shroud. But inside, there's warmth, there's friendship. There's the quiet knowledge that you've survived everything the North has thrown at you so far. To spring, Frank proposes, raising his cup of Mrs. Wilkes's blackberry wine. To spring, you and Billy echo. Spring, when the ice breaks up on the Yukon, when the sun returns in earnest, when new opportunities will surely emerge. The gold rush isn't over. Not for you, not yet. January in Dawson is darkness broken only by moments of murky twilight. The sun never truly rises, just sends a faint glow over the southern horizon for a few hours before abandoning the Yukon to night again. At its brightest, the world exists in a strange half-light, as if the sun simply can't be bothered to fully commit. 68 below this morning, Frank announces, returning from checking the thermometer outside Mrs. Wilkes's kitchen door. His breath creates a cloud that hangs in the air even inside the house. You look up from lacing your boots. Sure you want to go to work today? Northern Commercial would understand. Need the money. Frank wraps a scarf around his face until only his eyes are visible. Besides, cabin fever's worse than real fever. He's not wrong. The brutal cold has trapped many in Dawson indoors for days. Men who endured the Chilkoot Pass without complaint now find themselves undone by the psychological weight of confinement, darkness, and cold so severe it makes your teeth ache. They call it Arctic hysteria around here. Last week, a miner from a Bonanza Creek claim ran naked down Front Street in 50 below weather. The Mounties caught him before he froze to death, but not before frostbite claimed several of his extremities. Yesterday, a man shot his cabin mate over an argument about snoring. The week before, another hanged himself rather than face another day of darkness. "You sure you're all right?" you ask Billy, who sits quietly by the stove, staring into the flames. "Just tired," he replies, not looking up. Billy's been withdrawing more each day. The eager bank clerk who once marvelled at everything now speaks rarely, moves sluggishly, sleeps whenever he's not working. Mrs. Wilkes says it's common in first-timers. The winter darkness affects some harder than others. "Maybe take a day off," you suggest. "We can cover your portion of the room and board." Billy shakes his head stubbornly. "I'm fine, just need spring to hurry up." Spring. The word itself carries almost magical properties in Dawson now. Spring, when the sun returns, when the river ice breaks, when ships can bring fresh supplies, when mining can begin again in earnest. Spring is still months away. You finish dressing for the cold. Multiple layers of wool, a fur-lined parka purchased from a native woman for an exorbitant price, mukluks on your feet, mittens lined with rabbit fur. The outfit makes you look twice your normal size, but even with all this, the cold finds ways to reach your bones during the walk to work. Mrs. Wilkes says there's a dance at the Opera House tonight, you mention. Might do us good to go, be around people. Frank nods. Could be, though last dance I went to, 2 fellows pulled knives over a dance hall girl. Still better than staring at these walls another night. Outside, the cold assaults you like a physical force. Your nostrils stick together momentarily with each breath. The snow squeaks loudly underfoot, a sound only heard in extreme cold when snow crystals harden to the consistency of sand. The air itself seems crystallized, glittering with suspended ice particles that reflect the dim light from cabin windows. Dawson appears almost ghostly in the faint twilight. Smoke rises from hundreds of chimneys in straight columns, there being no wind to disturb it. Men move through the streets like Arctic spectres, bundled beyond recognition, leaving clouds of frozen breath in their wake. The Northern Commercial Company, where Frank works, is Dawson's largest store, a two-story wooden structure with a false front, making it look more impressive than it is. Inside, it's warm and well lit, stocked with whatever goods the company managed to ship in before freeze-up. Prices increase weekly as supplies dwindle. "See you tonight," Frank says, his voice muffled through layers of scarf. "Don't freeze." Your own workplace is 2 streets over, a large warehouse Sorensen has converted into a woodworking shop for the winter. Inside, the air is fragrant with the smell of fresh-cut lumber and wood shavings. 5 other carpenters work alongside you, all focused on indoor projects that will be ready for installation when spring construction resumes. "Read," Sorensen booms as you enter, stamping snow from your boots. "Perfect timing, got a special commission for you." He leads you to his office at the back of the warehouse, where a stranger waits, a short, barrel-chested man in expensive-looking furs. Despite the rough clothing, something in his bearing suggests wealth and authority. "Thomas Reed, meet Johnny Lind," Sorensen makes the introduction. "Mr. Lind owns claim number 26 above on Bonanza Creek." The name registers immediately. Lind is one of the Klondike Kings, among the handful of men who struck it truly rich in the early days of the gold rush. His claim reportedly produces thousands of dollars daily. "Heard you're the best finish carpenter in Dawson," Lind says, extending a hand. His grip is crushing, the hand of a man who worked his way to fortune. "Mr. Lind is building a new house," Sorensen explains. "Wants the finest woodwork for the interior, carved staircase, panelled walls, the works. Spent enough winters in shacks," Lind says with a grin. "Time for something proper. Can you handle the job?" "Yes, sir, I worked on some of Seattle's finest homes before coming north." "Good. I pay well for quality work. Double the going rate plus bonuses for exceptional craftsmanship." The commission is a godsend, steady, high-paying work that will see you through the winter and beyond. By the time you leave Sorensen's office with sketches and specifications, your spirits have lifted considerably despite the cold and darkness outside. That evening you return to Mrs. Wilkes's to find Harris sitting at the kitchen table deep in conversation with Billy. "Harris," you greet him, surprised. "Didn't expect to see you again so soon." He looks slightly embarrassed. "Came to ask about that carpentry work you mentioned. Swede brothers I was bunking with decided to sell the claim, head back to Skagway, cabins sold along with it. You're welcome to the floor space in our room until you find something you offer, surprising yourself with the ease of forgiveness. Mrs. Wilkes charges extra for board, but it's reasonable." Harris nods gratefully. "Won't be for long, just need to get back on my feet." The 4 of you, Frank, Billy, and now Harris again, attend the dance at the Dawson Opera House that night. The grandly named venue is actually just a large wooden building with a stage at one end, but tonight it's transformed into a wonderland of warmth and light. Coal oil lamps and candles illuminate every corner. A small band plays fiddles and a piano that somehow survived the journey over the Chilkoot. The crowd is predominantly male, but several dozen women are present. A mix of dance hall girls, wives who followed their husbands north, and the few female entrepreneurs who've established businesses in Dawson. Most remarkable is the atmosphere. For a few hours, the crushing winter darkness is forgotten. Men who might normally eye each other with suspicion as potential claim jumpers now laugh together, share drinks, swap stories. The normal hierarchies of wealth temporarily dissolve as successful mine owners mingle with ordinary labourers. Even Billy seems to revive somewhat, the colour returning to his face as he watches the dancers. "Go on," you encourage him. "Ask someone to dance." He shakes his head, suddenly shy again. "I don't know how." Perfect time to learn. Look at Harris. Harris has already found a partner, a plump, cheerful woman who runs the bakery on York Street. They whirl somewhat clumsily among the more practiced dancers. "I think I'll just watch," Billy insists. Later, as you're enjoying a cup of surprisingly good coffee near the refreshment table, Johnny Lind appears at your elbow. "All Reed," he nods in greeting. "Didn't expect to find my carpenter at a dance." "Even carpenters need a break from the darkness, Mr. Lind." He laughs, a booming sound that turns heads nearby. True enough, winter gets to everyone eventually. He gestures around the room. "Look at 'em all. Rich, poor, smart, stupid. All came north for the same reason. Gold," you say simply. "Gold," he agrees. "But you know what's funny? The ones who do best up here are often the ones who forget about the gold." You look at him questioningly. "I'm serious," he continues. "The miners who obsess over every pan, who jump from creek to creek chasing rumours, who spend their last dollar on sure thing claims. They usually end up broke. The ones who put their heads down, work smart and build something real. They're the ones who walk away winners." His words strike a chord. You think of your steady carpentry work versus Harris's ill-fated mining venture. "You were a carpenter in Seattle?" Lind asks. "Yes, sir. Had my own small crew before the crash. And now you're making more as a carpenter in Dawson than you ever did outside." It's not a question. You nod, seeing his point. "That's the real Klondike secret," Lind says, clapping you on the shoulder. "Gold's just a lure. The opportunity is in everything else." The conversation stays with you long after the dance ends as you trudge through the bitter night back to Mrs. Wilkes's boarding house. The northern lights dance overhead, curtains of green and blue shifting across the star-filled sky. January gives way to February. The cold maintains its grip, but almost imperceptibly the daylight begins to lengthen. The sun now skims the horizon for nearly 4 hours before setting again. Harris has settled back into your group as if he never left. Sorensen hired him as a general labourer in the workshop, not the skilled carpentry work you do, but steady employment that keeps him fed and housed. Your work on Lind's house proceeds steadily. He's building what will surely be the finest residence in Dawson. 2 stories with actual glass windows, indoor plumbing, a remarkable luxury here, and your handcrafted woodwork throughout. The pay is excellent, and Lind himself often stops by to check on progress, sometimes sharing stories of his early days in the Yukon. "Came up here in 1896, he tells you one day, as you're fitting panels in what will become his study. Flipped a coin with my partner, Venezuela for oil or Alaska for gold. Gold won. Lucky flip," you comment, carefully measuring a corner joint. "Luck's part of it," he admits. "But once you're here, luck only takes you so far. Rest is just hard work and keeping your eyes open when others are looking down." Frank continues at the Northern Commercial, where his responsibilities have increased. The store manager values his careful record-keeping and unfailing honesty, rare commodities in a gold-rush town. Only Billy fails to thrive, though the increasing daylight seems to help his mood somewhat. He remains withdrawn. His work at the assay office is still satisfactory, but lacks the enthusiasm he once showed. At night, he often wakes shouting from nightmares he refuses to discuss. "I'm worried about him," you tell Frank one evening as you watch Billy stare silently into the stove fire. "Homesickness, maybe," Frank suggests, "or just winter wearing him down." "It's more than that. Something's eating at him." You try talking to Billy, but he insists he's fine, just tired. Mrs. Wilkes observes him with concern, but says only, "Some aren't built for the north. No shame in it." In mid-February, unexpected drama breaks the winter monotony. You're working late at Lynn's house when shouts erupt from the street outside. Looking through the window, you see people running toward Front Street. "Fire," someone yells as they pass. Monte Carlo's burning fire is perhaps the most feared disaster in a frontier town built primarily of wood, where water must be melted from ice and pumps freeze solid. You grab your coat and join the stream of men heading toward the commotion. The Monte Carlo Saloon, one of Dawson's largest and most popular establishments, is indeed ablaze. Flames leap from windows and climb the facade. Against the dark winter sky, the fire is both beautiful and terrifying. A bucket brigade has formed, passing water from a hole chopped in the Yukon River ice. The effort seems futile. The fire is already too intense, and water freezes in the buckets before reaching the flames. The extreme cold that makes life so difficult also slows the fire's spread, creating an eerie standoff between opposing elemental forces. "Everyone out?" you ask a man next to you in the crowd. "Think so. Place was full, but they got people out the back when it started in the kitchen." As you watch the Monte Carlo burn, you spot Johnny Lind organizing a group of men to wet down adjacent buildings, preventing the fire from spreading. "Reed," he shouts when he sees you. "Good man. Need all hands. Grab that axe and help clear that snowbank. We need to make a fire break." You work alongside dozens of others for hours, battling both the fire and the cold that freezes sweat to your skin and makes tools stick to bare hands. By dawn, the Monte Carlo is a smouldering ruin, but the fire has been contained to just that building. A minor miracle in a town where disaster always seems just one mishap away. Exhausted, cold, and smoke-stained, you return to Mrs. Wilkes's to find the house in an uproar. Billy is missing. "Went to the fire with everyone else," Frank explains, his expression grave. "Never came back." A search begins immediately. You and Harris retrace the route to the Monte Carlo, looking for any sign of Billy in the snow. Frank checks the assay office and other places Billy frequents. Mrs. Wilkes remains at the boarding house in case he returns. By noon, with still no sign of him, you report the disappearance to the Mounties. The officer takes the information with professional concern, but his response is sobering. "We'll keep an eye out, but I should warn you, we lose a few every winter. Sometimes they wander off confused by the cold. Sometimes it's deliberate." "Billy wouldn't just wander off," you insist. "Hope you're right," the Mountie replies. "Keep checking the usual places. We'll do the same." The search continues through the day, growing more desperate as temperatures drop again with the early sunset. Dawson may be small by outside standards, but there are countless places a man might disappear. Abandoned cabins, storage sheds, the maze of tents on the outskirts. It's Harris who finally finds him in a half-collapsed shed behind the Northern Commercial. Billy sits huddled in a corner, conscious but unresponsive, his eyes open but seeing nothing. "Jesus, kid," Harris mutters, wrapping his own coat around Billy's shoulders. "What are you doing out here?" Billy doesn't answer, doesn't even seem to recognize Harris. His skin is cold, but not yet frostbitten, the shed providing just enough shelter from the wind to prevent the worst. You and Harris half-carry him back to Mrs. Wilkes's, where Frank has already summoned Dr. Wilson. The doctor examines Billy carefully, checking for frostbite and other injuries. Physically, he's all right, Wilson announces finally. Cold, exhausted, but no serious damage. Mentally, he shrugs. Hard to say. Seems like some kind of breakdown. I've seen it before in men who've been north too long. Will he recover, you ask? Possibly. Rest, warmth, food. Talk to him, even if he doesn't respond. Remind him who he is, where he comes from. The doctor packs his bag. If he doesn't improve in a few days, bring him to the hospital. Not much more they can do there, but they can watch him. For the next several days, one of you stays with Billy at all times. Mrs. Wilkes prepares special broths and teas, coaxing him to eat small amounts. Gradually, he begins to respond. First, just to his name, then with single-word answers to questions. On the fourth day, as you sit reading aloud from an old Seattle newspaper, Billy suddenly speaks clearly. "I can't stay here." You look up, startled by the coherence. "Billy?" His eyes are focused now, present in a way they haven't been for days. "I can't stay in Dawson, in the Yukon. I'll die here." "You're not going to die," you assure him. "You're getting better." He shakes his head. "Not the cold, not sickness. It's this place, the darkness, the isolation. I feel it eating away at me, each day a little more gone." You sit quietly, letting him talk. "I thought I was strong enough, thought if I could make it over the Chilkoot I could handle anything." His voice breaks slightly. "But I can't, not another day. Spring's coming," you offer. "Sun's already coming back. Doesn't matter, even in full summer we're still at the edge of the world. I need to go home." The conviction in his voice makes it clear this isn't just the rambling of a sick man. Billy has reached a breaking point that many stampeders face, the moment when they must decide if the Klondike dream is worth the cost. How, you ask practically? The passes are snowed in, rivers frozen, no one's getting out until spring breakup. I'll wait if I have to, work, save money for passage, but when the river opens, I'm going home. You nod slowly. "If that's what you need to do, we'll help you get ready." Billy's decision forces each of you to confront your own plans. That night, after Billy has fallen asleep, you sit with Frank and Harris in Mrs. Wilkes's kitchen, talking in low voices. "Kid's probably right to go," Harris admits. "Klondike's not for everyone." "What about you?" Frank asks him. "Still planning to try mining again come spring?" Harris stares into his coffee cup. "Don't know anymore. Been at this game a long time. Lost more than I've found." "And you?" you ask Frank. He shrugs. "Northern Commercial offered me a permanent position. Good pay, chance for advancement. Might stay at least another year." The question hangs in the air. What about you, Thomas? You consider your options. The carpentry work is plentiful and well paid. Lind has hinted he might have more projects after his house is completed. You could save substantial money in another year. But there's Margaret's letter, the news of your father, the family left behind. There's Seattle, where you once had your own business, your own dreams. Outside, the aurora borealis dances across the northern sky, casting ghostly light through the kitchen window. February is waning. March will bring more daylight, slightly warmer temperatures. April will see the sun remaining above the horizon for most of the day. And May will bring the spring break-up, when the Yukon ice fractures with sounds like artillery fire, when the river flows again, when ships can once more connect Dawson to the outside world. Decision time approaches, but it isn't here quite yet. For now, there's still winter to survive, work to complete, money to earn, and friends to support through the darkest season of the Klondike. March arrives with light that feels like a gift after the endless dark. The sun not only appears but actually climbs the sky, casting real shadows, bringing real warmth. Temperatures rise from the brutal 60 below to a practically balmy 0. Men shed their heaviest furs. Icicles drip from eaves. The world begins, ever so slowly, to thaw. Billy improves with the lengthening days. The vacant stare disappears, replaced by quiet determination. He works diligently at the assay office, saving every dollar for his passage home. In the evenings, he writes long letters to his family in Portland, describing the journey north in meticulous detail, perhaps trying to make sense of it all through the telling. Frank thrives at the Northern Commercial Company. His careful bookkeeping has caught the attention of company officials, earning him a promotion to assistant manager. The store prepares for the spring rush, the flood of new supplies and new stampeders that will arrive once the river opens. Harris has found his place in Sorensen's workshop. His mining dreams haven't entirely faded, but they've tempered with reality. Maybe next year, he says sometimes, but without the feverish conviction of before. And you've completed the interior woodwork for Lynn's house, a showcase of craftsmanship that has earned you a reputation as Dawson's premier carpenter. Your days are filled with new commissions, your pockets with gold dust. Yet, as spring approaches, questions nag at you. Stay or go? Continue in this strange, harsh, occasionally magical place, or return to Seattle with its more predictable comforts and family connections? What would you do, you ask Mrs. Wilkes one evening, as you help her inventory supplies in her pantry? The boarding house is running low on certain items after the long winter, but she's managed her stores carefully. "Can't answer that for you," she replies, making a note about the flour barrel. "Everyone has their own reasons for staying or leaving, but you stayed after your husband died." She considers this, setting down her pencil. "Yes, because I found purpose here. Independence. A life that was truly my own." She studies you with shrewd eyes. The question isn't really about Dawson or Seattle. It's about where you can best become the man you're meant to be. Her words echo in your mind as April unfolds, bringing real thaw. The hard-packed snow on Dawson streets turns to slush, then mud so deep that men lose boots in it. The constant drip from rooftops becomes a background music to daily life. The Yukon ice darkens, weakening from beneath, though it still holds firm enough to support dog sleds. Signs of impending breakup appear daily. Pressure ridges form in the river ice as the current strengthens beneath. Open leads of water appear near the banks. The wise move their boats and docks to higher ground, knowing the ice breakup brings a surge of water that can carry away anything in its path. Anticipation builds throughout Dawson. For some, like Billy, breakup means the chance to leave. For others, it brings fresh supplies, mail, news from outside. For miners, it marks the start of the true mining season, when water flows for sluicing and new ground can be worked. "When do you think it'll happen?" Billy asks almost daily, scanning the river for signs. "Mid-May, usually," Harris tells him, but the Yukon keeps its own schedule. Dawson has a betting pool on the exact minute the ice will begin moving. Stakes are high. The winner takes home several $1,000s. Men check the river obsessively, watching for the first shift in the massive ice sheet. You continue working, completing projects for various clients while pondering your future. Johnny Lind has moved into his finished house and immediately commissioned you to build custom furniture, chairs, tables, cabinets, all at premium rates. "You've got a real gift, Reed," he tells you as you deliver a walnut writing desk. "Could make a fortune up here, building for all the successful miners. Every man who strikes it rich wants a proper house to show for it." "Assuming more men strike it rich," you reply. Lind laughs. "Oh, they will. Maybe not on Bonanza or El Dorado anymore, but there's gold throughout these hills. Different kind of miner finding it now, though." "How's that?" "Big operations, heavy equipment, capital investment." Lind gestures out his window toward the creek valleys beyond Dawson, the lone prospector with a pan and shovel. His day is ending. The companies are moving in. It's a sentiment you've heard increasingly as spring approaches. The Klondike is changing, consolidating, individual claims are being bought up by consortiums with steam-powered equipment and hired laborers. The romantic era of the independent stampeder is giving way to industrial mining. In early May, you receive a letter from your sister Margaret. It's dated February, having travelled by dog sled over the winter trails, a rare mail delivery before river breakup. She writes of family matters, of Seattle slowly recovering from the economic depression, of how Robert's carpentry business has improved enough that he's hired an assistant. Between the lines, you read her hope that you'll return, tempered with understanding if you choose to stay north. Whatever you decide, she concludes, know that there is always a place for you here. Father would have wanted you to follow your own path, wherever it leads. That night, you dream of Seattle, its evergreen-covered hills, its busy harbour, its familiar streets. You wake with the smell of salt water in your nostrils, though it's only the moisture from the thawing earth outside your window. May 11th dawns clear and unusually warm. By mid-morning, a tension fills Dawson. Men gather along the riverfront, watching the ice with particular intensity. You join them during your lunch break, standing beside Harris on the high bank. See there, he points toward the centre of the river, water on top of the ice, and those dark patches, ice is rotting from within. As if responding to his words, a deep groaning sound emanates from the frozen Yukon, the voice of a giant stirring from winter sleep. The crowd murmurs. More people arrive. Someone rings a bell, alerting those in town that something is happening. The groaning intensifies. Cracks appear in the massive ice sheet, dark lines spreading like lightning across the white surface. The pressure builds visibly, ice buckling upward along the fractures. Then, with a sound like artillery fire, the Yukon ice begins to move. The crowd erupts in cheers. Men throw hats in the air. Those who've won the betting pool celebrate their windfall. Others simply revel in the spectacle of nature's power unleashed. The ice doesn't just melt, it breaks into enormous chunks that grind against each other as the current pushes them downstream. The river rises rapidly as the natural dam formed by ice downriver creates backup. Floodwater laps at the lower streets of Dawson. Men rush to move supplies to higher ground. You stand transfixed by the sheer majesty of it. After months of stillness, the Yukon is alive again, roaring with newfound freedom. It's a rebirth you feel in your own body, a loosening of something that's been frozen within you. Hell of a sight, isn't it? Harris says beside you, grinning like a boy. Never gets old, no matter how many breakups you've seen. The spectacle continues for days. Ice flows tumble downstream, sometimes piling up to create temporary dams that cause the water to rise alarmingly before breaking free again. The river carries tree trunks, parts of cabins, occasionally entire boats that were left too close to the banks. Within a week, the ice is mostly gone, replaced by a swollen, fast-flowing river the colour of coffee with too much cream, brown with silt and debris from the spring runoff. And then, the moment everyone has been waiting for, the first steamboat whistle from downriver. The SS Alice arrives on May 20th, pushing against the still swift current, loaded with supplies, mail, and passengers. The entire town turns out to greet her. After 6 months of isolation, Dawson is reconnected to the outside world. More steamers follow in quick succession. News arrives of the Spanish-American War, of political developments, of continued economic recovery in the States. Fresh food appears in stores, eggs, potatoes, even some oranges that sell for $1 each and disappear within hours. And people. So many people. Despite reports that the best claims are taken, the stampede continues. These new arrivals look so much like you did a year ago, eager, anxious, ill-prepared for what awaits. "Fools," Harris mutters, watching a group struggling up from the docks with obviously inadequate supplies, still thinking they'll just pick gold nuggets from creek beds. "Were we any different, you ask?" He chuckles. "Guess not, though at least we came early enough to have a fighting chance." Billy secures passage on the SS Alice's return journey. The morning of his departure, you all walk him to the dock. You, Frank, Harris, even Mrs. Wilkes. "Sure you won't stay another year?" Frank asks, though he knows the answer. Billy shakes his head, smiling slightly. "I've had enough adventure for several lifetimes, going to get a nice boring bank job back in Portland. Maybe even convince my mother I'm not completely reckless." You embrace him. This young man who arrived in Dawson as a boy and leaves having aged years in just months. "Right when you get home," you tell him. "Let us know you made it safely." "I will," he promises. "And if you come back through Portland," he leaves the invitation open. As the steamer pulls away from the dock, Billy stands at the rail, waving until he's too small to distinguish among the other passengers. Another stampeder whose northern dream ended differently than planned, but who survived to tell the tale. His departure forces the question you've been avoiding: what about you? With river navigation open, your carpentry skills could easily secure you passage to Seattle. You have substantial savings now, enough to restart your business there, perhaps even expand it beyond what you had before. Margaret and her family wait. Seattle, with its familiar comforts and moderate climate, beckons. Yet Dawson has work for years to come. Lind and others continue commissioning projects at rates unheard of outside. Despite the industrial shift in mining, the town itself is still growing, still building, still needing skilled hands. "What's keeping you up here anyway?" you ask Frank one evening. With Billy gone, you've moved to a smaller room at Mrs. Wilkes's, still sharing with Harris, but with more space now. Frank considers the question carefully. "Opportunity, I suppose. Back in Seattle, I was just another unemployed iron worker. Here, I'm assistant manager at the largest store in the Klondike. In a few years, I could be running my own business. Worth the winters? The isolation? For me, yes." Frank studies you. "What about you? You've got more reason to go back than any of us. Family, connections." You don't answer immediately, watching the midnight sun cast long shadows through the window. Even at this late hour, Dawson bustles with activity, making up for the forced inaction of winter. "I came for gold," you say finally. "Never found it in the ground, but found it anyway, just not where I expected." June brings full summer to the Yukon, a compressed season of intense activity and growth. Wildflowers carpet the hillsides. The sun barely sets, creating nights of lingering twilight that last just a few hours before dawn returns. Mosquitoes emerge in clouds so thick they can choke a man. The mud of early spring hardens, making the streets passable again. Mining operations run around the clock in the constant daylight. New discoveries on creeks further from Dawson create mini-rushes, though none compare to the original Bonanza finds. Dawson's population swells as steamers arrive daily, then dwindles as disillusioned stampeders head home after finding the best opportunities already claimed. Your decision crystallizes gradually, not in a single moment of clarity, but through a collection of smaller realizations. The satisfaction of creating something with your hands that will outlast you. The fellowship found in shared hardship. The simple pride of surviving where many couldn't. One evening in late June, you sit on the bench outside Mrs. Wilkes's boarding house, enjoying the warm air and endless northern sunset. Johnny Lind appears, walking up from the direction of the steamboat landing. "Reed," he greets you, taking a seat beside you. "Just the man I wanted to see. Mr. Lind, how can I help you? Been thinking about that furniture you made me. Quality work, better than anything shipped in from outside. He pauses, lighting a cigar. I've got some business partners opening hotels in Dawson, Skagway, even Nome, where they've found gold on the beach. They need furnishings, lots of them, high quality, built to last. You wait, sensing there's more. I'm proposing a partnership. You handle the craftsmanship, I handle the business end. We set up a proper workshop, hire assistants, fill these contracts. Lind puffs his cigar. Could be very profitable for both of us. The offer is unexpected, but somehow feels inevitable. The culmination of skills and opportunities aligning in this unlikely place. I'd need to think about it, you say, though you already feel certainty growing. Talk to some people. Lind nods. Of course. No rush. He stands, brushing dust from his trousers. By the way, I'm sending a boat up to my new claim on Dominion next week. Harris asked for a spot on it. Seems he's not quite done with mining after all. This surprises you. Harris hasn't mentioned any mining plans recently. That night, you find Harris packing his few belongings in your shared room. Were you going to tell me? You ask. He looks up, slightly embarrassed. Meant to. Just got confirmed today. Lind's offered me a foreman position at his new operation. Good pay, 10% of production. Thought you were done with mining. Harris shrugs. Thought so too, but it's in my blood, I guess. One more season? See how it goes. You sit on your bed, watching this man who guided you over the Chilkoot Pass, who taught you to navigate the Yukon's waters, who has become something between a mentor and a friend. Think you'll find it this time, the big strike? Doesn't much matter anymore, Harris says, surprising you. Realized something this winter. Been chasing gold so long, I forgot to build anything that lasts. He gestures around the simple room. No home, no family, nothing with my name on it that'll still be here when I'm gone. The admission carries the weight of years of reflection. Not too late, you suggest. Maybe not, he agrees. But first, one more season in the creeks. Some habits die hard. 2 days later, you give Johnny Lind your answer, accepting his partnership offer. The following week, you write to Margaret, explaining your decision to remain in Dawson at least another year. The letter is difficult to compose, but the words come from a place of certainty. I didn't find what I came looking for, you write, but I found something I wasn't seeking, a place where my skills are valued, where I can build something meaningful. I miss you all terribly, but for now, my path continues here. Summer advances with the intensity unique to northern latitudes, everything growing, blooming, living with desperate energy before the inevitable return of winter. Your partnership with Lind takes shape. You secure a large workshop space, order specialized tools from outside, hire 3 assistants skilled in basic woodworking. Frank continues his rise at the Northern Commercial. Harris sends occasional notes from Dominion Creek, where Lind's operation is producing modest but reliable amounts of gold. Mrs. Wilkes maintains her boarding house, now filled with a new crop of stampeders. Dawson itself evolves rapidly. Proper government buildings rise, streets are graded, telephone lines appear, the rough mining camp is becoming a real city, albeit one perched at the edge of wilderness. In August, nearly a year after your arrival in Dawson, you complete your first major commission under the new partnership, furnishing an entire hotel. The day the last piece is delivered, you stand with Lind in the hotel lobby, surveying the results of your labor. Fine work, Reed. Lind nods approvingly. Worth every penny. Thank you for the opportunity, you reply. Opportunity cuts both ways. You could have gone back to Seattle, been just another carpenter. Here, you're Thomas Reed, finest woodworker in the Klondike. As you walk back to your workshop through streets bathed in late summer sunshine, you reflect on the strange journey that brought you here, the newspaper headline that caught your eye in Seattle, the desperate gamble with borrowed money, the brutal trek over Chilkoot Pass, the boat built with your own hands, the river that nearly killed you, the winter that tested your limits. And now this, not the gold rush fortune you dreamed of, but something perhaps more valuable, a reputation, a skill honed through challenge, a place in this remote community that would never have been possible in the crowded world outside. You stop at the bluff overlooking the Yukon River. Steamboats churn the water, carrying people and supplies to and from this improbable city. Beyond them, the river winds through valleys, flanked by hills turning yellow with approaching autumn. Soon enough, the cycle will begin again. Freeze up, darkness, the long winter wait for spring. But you're no longer afraid of what winter brings. You've survived it once. You can survive it again. As the northern sun warms your face, you silently thank whatever impulse, whatever madness, whatever twist of fate led you to join this strangest of migrations. The Klondike hasn't made you rich in the way you imagined, but it has given you something the thousands who turned back never found. It has given you a story worth telling, a challenge met, a self discovered, and in the land of gold, that might be the richest find of all. The soft breeze off the river washes over you, carrying the scent of spruce and distant mountains. Your muscles relax as you breathe deeply, letting the tension of the long journey finally release. The endless summer sky above feels like a blanket, gently laying across your consciousness, inviting rest after a season of endless labor. Your eyelids grow heavy, just like they might be now as you drift toward the peaceful sleep you've so richly earned.